Cleveland City Council to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Present. Present.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. May Dugan, come on up. Ordinance number 411, 2024 by Councilmembers Griffin. Madam Clerk, may it please be added to this legislation, 411, 2024. By a departmental request, emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to enter into one or more contracts with the Near West Side Multi-Service Corporation, DBA, the May Dugan Center, to provide services to refugees in Cleveland. President Simperman or Kem? Who's starting us off?
I'll start off.
Or the mayor's office. Hello. Kick
Can't
us
avoid
off.
me. I don't get a lot of cheers to the mayor's office at this table, so thank you. Hello, everyone. You're not
This is a rosy group over here.
to the chair, through the chair to the committee.
Davis?
Thank you for having us. I'll be very brief. May Dugan's joining us here today, as well as Global Cleveland, in celebration of this tremendous new partnership, this new chapter in May Dugan's history. Before you is a modest request for $50,000, authorization for a $50,000 contract with May Dugan to support their recent refugee resettlement efforts. I want to put 3 notes on the table before handing it over to May Dugan, who can get into every detail you'd like to learn about. 1, this is a program exclusively for folks here on legal status. This is only for folks who are in the refugee program. This is not related to the border, not related to buses. The folks who are impacted by this program are folks who are handpicked by the United States government to come to this country. They undergo some of the most intensive vetting processes that the world sees. So I just want to make sure we're all very comfortable with that element. Number 2, our modest $50,000 is the last one-time startup cost element necessary for May Dugan to truly achieve economies of scale here and start to bring in between $1.3 and $1.4 million per year from the federal government. This is a large annual sum that feds are paying in return for having a one-time startup cost here. Those numbers make a lot of sense to me. That's 10 to 11 jobs at May Dugan here in the city of Cleveland, in conjunction with a bunch of services provided accordingly. And the third thing is I just have to commend May Dugan and, of course, Joe Simperman for stepping up at a really critical juncture. Cleveland was at risk of losing this federal funding stream, these jobs, these new residents in the city of Cleveland. May Dugan said, we see the stream evaporating and we're going to make sure it doesn't. They put themselves forward. They took the bold step of going forth and saying, we are the ones who will make this happen here locally. And so I just want to make sure I just want to make sure they're hearing it from me on the record that this is a tremendous accomplishment. We're grateful for their efforts here. But with that, I'll turn it
Mr.
over.
Davis. Mr. Kem, Director.
Thank you, everybody, again, for allowing us to be here. Is this on?
Yep,
Okay.
you're on.
So you would think that we were busy enough with our other 5 core programs, and taking on the refugee program has really been an honor, number 1, to be selected by and approved by Homeland Security and the U.S. State Department to offer these services. Last year, the May Dugan Center served over 22,000 people between our 6 core programs. And with the renovation and expansion of the building, and thank you very much for your support for that project as well, we're going to be able to increase the number of clients served through our behavioral health program, our food distribution program, our trauma recovery center, our senior outreach program, and of course with our educational resource center and with the refugee program. Andy has put together a PowerPoint, but I do want to introduce my team here. Sarah Edelman is our director of the Refugee Resettlement Program, and Abdenor has been with us now for several months, and Andy Traris, our deputy director.
Thank you.
Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for having us. So just wanted to again highlight that, kind of building off of what Rick said, we're on track to serve 25% more people this year across our programs and services. So while we're here today to talk to you about refugee services, we just want to point out that we're still providing all of our other services to residents of the city of Cleveland in all 17 wards. So some background. So May Dugan has partnered with the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, also known as HIAS. They contract directly with the State Department, and they're the oldest refugee resettlement agency in the world. In early 2023, HIAS was looking for a new affiliate in Cleveland, and they approached the May Dugan Center, facilitated by Global Cleveland, to consider taking on this program. Our board of directors at the May Dugan Center vetted the program, weighed the benefits and the costs, and approved moving forward. We were approved by the State Department, as well as HIAS, and accepted our first families in September of 2023. So far, we've welcomed 145 people since the beginning of September. So as Austin had mentioned, just in terms of who we're talking about, refugees come to the U.S. and are invited by the State Department. They have a legal status when they arrive. They're eligible for work immediately, and they are on a path to citizenship as well. So they can get a green card within a year, and then citizenship within 5 years. So. And then for talking about specifically what the resettlement services are, I'm actually going to hand it over to Sarah Edelman, our Director of Education and Refugee Services, as well as Abdinor, who's one of our case aides.
Nope. If it's green, you're good.
Okay.
You're good. Yep.
Okay. So the first 90 days, once we welcome our refugees in, we are responsible for finding them housing, affordable housing. We are responsible to furnish the house for them, preferably by donations. And then the clock starts ticking as soon as they land. Then they have 90 days to become what they consider self-sufficient, which is have your Social Security card, apply for public benefits, SNAP, Medicaid, get your medical appointments, and then also enroll in school for school-aged children. With that, there's also a cultural orientation class that we provide at the May Dugan Center. Every Friday, we bring in one group of refugees. It's kind of like a cycle. And we teach them different parts of living here in the United States. How to use, like, the stove, how to use banking, things like that. And then we also send them home every Friday with food, with our food program. We also have intensive case management for all of the different things that come up for our refugees. You know, if the Social Security card gets held up, if I-94, some other paperwork gets held up, we kind of help out, figure out how we can best assist those clients get the paperwork needed for jobs. And I think that's probably the most important part is being part of the economy. Everyone wants to contribute. They just have to find the right spot and get a job that they can sustain being Clevelanders. We also provide English classes, and it's requirements for some of the programming that we do provide. After the first 90 days, some people go into a secondary program. Others have jobs. They're ready to roll. And then we also are bringing on a case management program for significant medical cases as well. Am I forgetting anything? Okay.
Thank you, Sarah. So specifically related to our request here today. So we have about 6 different contracts with HIAS and the State Department for our various services provided to refugees. So for the initial resettlement services, we get paid on a per-person basis. So while we're in our startup phase for the first year or two, we are accepting, we're on target to serve 200 families this year, about 300 next year. And so as the program grows, there's an economy of scale to it, to whereby the third year where we're seeing about 400 to 500 refugees, then we'll be able to have the program be self-sustaining. And so in total, for this year, it'll be about $875,000 in federal funds coming through May Dugan in the city of Cleveland. As we're in the startup phase, once we're at full capacity, it'll be $1.3 to $1.4 million annually. About 10 to 11 different jobs at the May Dugan Center, kind of in different departments, and kind of jumping to some of the other benefits of the program. So we've discussed jobs and the federal funds. It's also helping grow our local population over the next 10 years, including our startup period. We're projecting about 4,500 refugees to be resettled in Cleveland over the next 10 years, helping fill local workforce needs of the people that we've resettled thus far. 76% have either an advanced degree or significant work experience in various fields, everything from construction to we had a family of doctors arrive recently from Afghanistan, and so can help fill some of our local workforce needs as well and gaps that we have in the local community. And then also just increasing the cultural diversity of our community. So of our 145 folks, the number one group that has arrived has been 40% from Afghanistan, 22% Syrian, 18% Congolese. Nicaraguan, Colombian, and Venezuelan have all arrived in 2024. That is a new kind of growing group for us. And then a few others from Ukraine, Russian, Russia, and Uzbekistan. So. And lastly, as we're in the startup phase and until we can get to that economy of scale, we reached out to a lot of different funders in the community. And so here listed up above is those who have contributed thus far to our startup funds. As Austin mentioned, this will be kind of the last piece to really set us up for success, to really launch this program, to be sustainable and successful for the refugees who are arriving, as well as to have this service in Cleveland. That's it. Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Just a couple of things, if we can go to the following support. You received support from the county, Jack and Joseph Morton Foundation, Cleveland Foundation, Mount Sinai, George Gunn, Glick, and Global. If, just want to ask the question, if the city of Cleveland didn't put in, will a lot of this funding be utilized for other cities, or did they do it specifically so that this could be settled here? Because it's my understanding that this did not have to be in Cleveland, that they could have actually invested in other cities. And we want that service here, but I'm trying to make sure you can articulate for our colleagues about all of these agencies and why they made that commitment and why this additional money leverages these dollars, if you could, please.
Sure. So if May Dugan had not said yes to this, Highest, the national partner, would have taken these 400 spots and that $1.4 million to a different city and found a new affiliate in a different city. And so we would have lost that funding locally. The funders that are listed on the screen, the local funders, saw the value in having this program remain in Cleveland, and so contributed to help us with the startup funds.
Okay, and we do know that diversity and trying to attract more talent acquisition in the city of Cleveland is something that we all cherish. I have Councilman McCormick, Polensek, Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to speak in favor of 4/11/2024. I appreciate our friends that are here at the table today. And specifically, not only our partners at Global Cleveland, but also May Dugan, and making sure that this program is implemented well. And we know that your track record in the city of Cleveland is doing that with programs across the board. So you're a trusted partner. It's good to see you here today. Chair, a couple quick thoughts on this. First, I appreciate this is startup money, right? So this is not something that is needed on an annual basis, and the large investment coming in from the federal government on these issues. I think about the data that shows that when, and we see it cities across the country, and my colleague President Simperman over here can tell you much more than I could ever, but as cities grow their population, as they welcome newcomers, they become more economically prosperous, right? And that you need to look no further than Cleveland, Ohio for that. We were most economically prosperous when we had the largest amount of newcomers in the city. So we know that not only this type of activity is the right thing to do, it's the humane thing to do, it's important for families seeking refuge, but it's also, from my perspective, and I think a lot of the data will show you, and I think about Philadelphia, President Simperman and the work they've done around newcomers, and what they see is as you welcome in newcomers, those folks create jobs, they create businesses, they live in neighborhoods that need more population, they shop at the supermarkets, all of those types of things that we want to see in our economy. In addition, of course, to adding cultural language and other aspects to our community. So, President, I often think of in Cleveland, how do we increase the amount of newcomers in Cleveland? And again, I think of Philly, who has significantly increased its newcomers, and they went from losing population to growing. They are now growing. And then that's in large part to the city and the community's efforts to make sure they were open to welcoming newcomers. So really appreciate that. And again, from a humanities perspective, from a migrants perspective, critical, but also I would argue very much so from the city's perspective, if we want to add to our cultural diversity, language diversity, if we want to add to our, our economy, this is one of those tools that can be really, really helpful. I'm just a couple questions, actually, one, because the others were answered. To President Simperman, critically, from what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, ability for folks to gain or to obtain gainful employment is critical. Do we know, I know the feds have been kind of a roadblock in ensuring that folks, when they come to the U.S., are able to get that job, get on their feet. Do we know the status of the environment around newcomers gaining employment? I would ask it from two perspectives. One, from a legal feds, but also from, and I know you've worked extremely hard on getting the employers in Cleveland to welcome newcomers. So I'd love for you to just speak on those 2 points.
Thank you, Councilman, to the chair and to members of the committee. First, thank you so much for even hearing 4/11/2024 today. Thanks to Mayor Bibb and Mr. Davis for working on this now for some time, and to the council for being so supportive. Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, the benefit of this group of newcomers is that they are all arriving on the United States soil with an unrestricted work visa. So the minute that they land, they could work at City Hall. They could work at a hospital or for a variety of different employers. Our region continues to evolve in terms of realizing this as a part of our secret sauce. And we're all, every time we welcome somebody and somebody sees it for themselves, they become a real advocate. Councilman, to the chair, I should also tell you that this is one of the rarest visas in one of the rarest countries where the individuals who are coming to Cleveland must pay their plane ticket back to the United States government. So whatever idea people have about those who take and those who give, this is a loan program. Now, some of our colleagues across the globe will say that that's a bad thing. I will say, as an American citizen, it helps our newest newcomers build up a credit history, so that 90% of them become U.S. citizens within the year that they're eligible, year 7 of being here. They become a U.S. citizen and they've already got a credit history. They're on their way to home ownership. They're on their way to buying a car, to being able to do what the American dream is. I'll share this with you, Mr. Councilman, to the chair. We're lucky because we have 2 other resettlement agencies, Catholic Charities and USCRI. They are moving at full steam and full operation. Last year was the busiest year for welcoming refugees in Cleveland since 1948. That isn't even including our sisters and brothers coming from Central and South America. Some of the folks from Ukraine and Afghanistan are in this, but they're also coming in other ways. If we continue to do what we're doing with a mayor and a city council and a county executive and candidly a governor who welcome international newcomers, the story of Cleveland could be much similar to the story of Philadelphia, Detroit, and Buffalo in the census, which is that we're actually growing in population the next time our numbers are counted. We continue to work on the workforce piece. It is, I don't want to say it's an easy thing, but there's a lot more organizations that are realizing these are folks that really can work in places and are accessible. Language is a barrier at times, as is companies who've said we've never hired somebody. But Councilman, to the chairman, each one teach one, each one we bring one along.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate that feedback, and that's great to know that these folks are able to work immediately to support their families and to build a life right here. And again, Mr. President, speak in favor of 411, as we've seen in other cities across the country, especially those that have lost population like Cleveland.
Yes.
This is not a silver solution, but it's a critical part of being able to restore neighborhoods and grow our population. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have Councilman Palencia, KZ, Joe Jones, Councilman
Thank you.
Kevin Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, and it's good to see the May Dugan folks here at the table, and you do good work. And I had the pleasure to go over and see your complex. I have a couple questions, and then I also want to talk about transparency. The numbers that you provided for services, I think many of us, those of us on the east side, would like to figure out how we can up those numbers as it pertains to residents that are being served, total served, because we all know the good things that you do. So I want to put that on the table, number one. And then number two, being my own family was immigrants to this country in the late 1800s and other part in the early 1900s. So you mentioned about vetting. Who does the vetting?
So the vetting it happens overseas through the State Department. There are a lot of different, and Sarah, do you know all the various? There is at least 4 Yeah.
Councilman, Councilman to
Yeah.
the chair, there's 14 steps that the Department of Homeland Security goes through before they will allow anyone to come to the United States. Interviews are done of the person, of their family, of their employers, biometrics exams. Oftentimes, and we've seen this in Cleveland, especially in Councilman Casey's ward with the larger Nepalese and Bhutanese community, sometimes people are waiting 15, 16, 17 years in refugee camps before they can come here.
Okay.
So their security is very thorough, and the challenge that folks have is that less than 1% of people who are eligible to come to the U.S. are actually selected. So they pay a lot of attention to it, Councilman, and while they're here, before they get their visa, there's a lot of scrutiny before they get their green card or their permanent citizenship. There's a lot of scrutiny, and so there's a heavy focus on that. But most of the people are coming here, Councilman, not because they wanted to leave their country or their home, but because their country or their home doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. And Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, in keeping with transparency here, and to Mr. Austin Davis from the mayor's shop, you're aware of this undercurrent that's out here in the community, that the phone calls that are being made and the emails about that the county and the city is trying to attract illegals up here. And I fielded a few of these phone calls, and I've said to folks, no. We are not a sanctuary city. And I've said to some of my black leadership who've called me over this in the ward, who've talked about what's happening in Chicago, some of the animosity that has infected the city of Chicago because of the number of illegals there. I said, where is this coming from? Well, it's out there, Councilman, it's out there. So you said it earlier, this is not about attracting, because you need to say this to the viewing public, this is not about attracting illegal folks here. This is not about setting up a sanctuary city here in city of Cleveland or on the west side. We're inviting people here who are coming here legally and who are documented coming here legally, who are going to assimilate into our greater Cleveland, our city communities, and benefit Cleveland in the long run. Because you and the administration and the mayor and the county executive need to understand there's an undercurrent out here. And I've felt it. I've heard it. I've been on the receiving end of some of those calls and some of those emails. So I just want to put that out so folks here at the table understand that there is, and I don't know if it's because of what has taken place here on Monday nights. I think that's added to some of the adversarial opinions and thoughts that are out there in our city, because Monday nights, as many as you know, have not been pleasant here for a long period of time by individuals who've been attacking the mayor, the council, attacking our city verbally. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to say, for the record, to the viewing public, this is about getting folks who are going to benefit our city in the long run, who are bringing people in here that are going to benefit this city. They're not coming for the freebies. They're not coming for the public dole. They're coming to be real residents of Cleveland and be stakeholders in this city. You want to comment, Mr. Day? Are you aware of the undercurrent that's out there?
Through the chair to the councilperson, yes, certainly. And thank you for bringing it up. And I appreciate
I think we have to talk frankly at this table about it.
Oh, certainly. It's there is a loud national conversation happening, right? It's not just here, but it's everywhere. You mentioned Chicago has been in a tough spot, but New York, Denver, the list goes on. That said, we're particularly excited about this program because it is doing everything right. This is a refugee program run by the United States government. As I said before, it has nothing to do with buses. It has nothing to do with the border. As Mr. Simperman said before, these are folks who have been waiting in refugee camps for up to 15 years for the opportunity to become an American, doing it what we would call the right way. I just want to make sure the viewing public understands that this is money for a very specific program, doing everything the right way, thinking about folks who are fleeing the worst circumstances that the world can ever see. The United States government has, in its wisdom, found them, vetted them, and determined that they're a good fit for our country.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, I'm here to support the legislation. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I add one thing to the councilman's perspective?
Yeah.
Councilman to the chair. When the name popped up, HIAS, we say acronyms all the time in Cleveland. The reason it's called the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society is that the organization's been in existence before Israel was a country. And when you look at the origin story of the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society and the Jewish Cleveland Federation, it was because nobody would help Jewish people resettle here 130 years ago. And if you close your eyes for a minute, right, we go back to when I was sitting in those chairs when 9/11 happened. We were in a Community and Economic Development Committee meeting. Craig Willis was chairing the committee. And everybody was so angry and frustrated with our Arabic-speaking sisters and brothers. And now we're hearing, depending on what TV station, the border and all this other conversation, when the bottom line is, and I've had the privilege to meet the people that Director Kem and Mr. Traris, Sarah, and my brother Abdinor Abdullah are resettling. They're just like us. They want to be in our neighborhoods. They want their kids to go to good schools. They want to get a good job. And I'll share with you, this is money for people who have been vetted, candidly, more than some of our neighbors have in the city of Cleveland. And the people who are coming they believe in the American dream. And I would just ask, because so much of the leadership for this comes from people like Councilwoman Santana, who a year ago was asking all of us to get our heads together. And you convened, Mr. Chairman, to the Councilwoman, 40 different organizations to say, what are we doing to welcome our sisters and brothers from all over? And as a result of that, we have legislation like this from the mayor to the council president. The Welcome Center that the county executive and county council has stood up in the heart of Old Brooklyn in Councilman Harsh's ward, where people are coming now and they're getting the things that they need. And we're just really fortunate that we have a city government and a county government that are so aware of this. My hope and prayer, Mr. Councilman, to the chair, is that in 2030, our story will be more like Buffalo's, whose census grew in the last decade on the basis of two demographies. One, immigrants, two, African-American families. That city grew in census because they got good at what they're already good at. And this is an example for Cleveland to follow, and why I'm just so hopeful for council support for this important piece of legislation, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you. All right, Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the other side of the table, I'm just curious, why May Dugan and not Global Cleveland? Why take on something more? You guys are so good at doing what you already do. Why take something else on when Global Cleveland is, we're not reinventing the wheel?
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Councilman, to the chair, the city of Cleveland was given 60 days when we were told that HIAS was going to, and the question was asked by the council president, if these folks were going to move somewhere else. They were. They were going to move to Columbus and Toledo, the refugees who would be resettled here, because HIAS, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, already has a presence there. It was an absolute Hail Mary. And I'll never forget when I called Rick and Andy and his team. Councilman, every single thing that they do on that chart that serves our neighbors in Cleveland, all of our native-born sisters and brothers, that is what a refugee resettlement agency needs. Help with medical appointments, helping people find housing, furniture, food. And so it was a perfect fit. And so when the Jewish Federation and Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society said to us, because we know them, we work with them, who would be an ideal candidate, we reached out to May Dugan and the leadership of Rick and Andy and his board. They said yes, with the caveat that we help raise $450,000 for them, because that money that comes to them, grateful for the $50,000 from the city through the mayor and the council president, but that money, we needed a startup fund because they have all the other programs going. So candidly, they were the best fit, and in a miracle, they said yes. And I would just say that they have joined two other fantastic resettlement agencies with the United States Committee on Refugees and Immigrants in Fulton in Councilwoman Santana's ward, and Catholic Charities in Councilwoman Spencer's ward. And we are back up to 1,500 people a year, God willing, future City of Cleveland employees and people that are just doing great work.
All right, thank you. And then, Mr. Chairman, to May Dugan, does any of this include additional outreach to the communities or CMSD? And I ask that because, as Mr. Simperman can attest, I have a very large Bhutanese community. And when it started, when the Bhutanese started immigrating into Ward 16, it was more of a culture thing with the complaints that we were getting from the conditions of the house. They were hanging laundry in their front yard. Their shoes were in their front yard. They didn't know what a washer and dryer was. I remember the family, right? So, and it was more about us having to teach them a lot of what they're allowed to do now, right? That they weren't allowed to do in some of their other countries. So the question is there, when a family migrates into the city of Cleveland and they're so far behind the traditional values or norms or what you're allowed to do in the United States and in the city of Cleveland, is there any outreach to the rest of the community or even reaching out to the council person saying, listen, you've got a family who's being resettled here. You may want to keep an eye on them or let them know or let the neighbors know, because in our situation, it was such a quiet street that the street almost became in an uproar over. And it wasn't until we educated not only the new immigrants, but the rest of the community to kind of take them under their wings to show them the ways of what's norm and what's not norm. So, is that kind of thought ever brought to light in when we're finding new housing for a family?
Up until this point, no, but that's a great idea.
All
We
right.
should do more outreach like that.
I only ask
Yeah.
because we had an incident, right? And it was more like, how do we educate their new neighbors on the new neighbors that are moving in, right? And everybody's, got to learn to get along.
Councilman, you allow me on that point?
Yeah, sure.
On that point, I know when we were with the Community Relations Board, this was some years ago, and you might want to revisit it. I mean, we actually had a program to really help around things like letting people know what day the trash day is, basic street maintenance, what time you're supposed to be at school, those kind of things. So in addition to CRB, you guys might want to be helpful in putting something like that together just to help people acclimate and help them be able to work and operate in our community. Because he's exactly right. We ran into that with the Somali and Somali Bantu community in the past around that.
And we do that through our cultural orientation program. We go through and we try to figure out which each the trash days are for everyone, so they can we practice how to do that. We talk about smoke alarms. We talk about all of these things in the classroom with them. But the idea of reaching out to council people when we have a group of people moving into their ward might be a really great way for us to collaborate and make sure everyone is included.
Well, I can't speak for my colleagues, but anybody who's getting rehoused into Ward 16, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to be a part of that new process for them that they're starting to go through. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, I have Councilman Joe Jones and Councilman Kevin Bishop.
You want me to yield, Kevin? Mr. Chairman, first of all, let me just, it's really good to see my colleague, Joe Simperman, at the other end of the table. It's been quite some time since we've both sat at this table together, and it's great to see that you're helping folks that are certainly in need. And I want to just take the opportunity. I looked through the presentation of the May Dugan Center, and you guys are really doing a good work for the city of Cleveland. Who may I ask is the executive director, Mr. Chairman? I'm sorry, what's your name?
Rick Kim, K-E-M-N.
Mr. Kim, as I look through the numbers here that you have presented today, you have a breakdown for every single ward. I want to say thank you because I don't hardly ever see that often, from various different folks, only a handful that will break down exactly what you do and how you serve the neighborhood. My question was, first of all, I want to thank you for the 319 citizens you served in my neighborhood and the food distribution to another 240. How do you give out services? Is it the people who come to your facility, or how does that work?
Yes, so we've been, since our inception in 1969, we've been distributing food, and we're now one of the largest, if not the largest, food pantries in the Cleveland Food Bank 6-county jurisdiction. So people come to the May Dugan Center, they have to make an appointment, and we increased this since January. We have, it's open for 3 days a week. We also do some deliveries on Thursday evenings. And we're planning on expanding and reaching out like a 25% increase in 2024.
I see. Now, I'm not sure, because I know we gave a lot of money out for ARPA. Did we give you guys any money?
Yes, for our capital campaign.
How much did we give you, if I may?
500,000.
So you received 500,000 from the city?
We actually haven't seen the money yet, but hopefully this week.
We did our part. So we got to figure out why
We have a meeting Thursday.
we got to figure out why you don't have your 500,000. Question. So I would presume, Mr. Chairman, that the refugees will be coming to your organization, your
Yeah.
institution, and you will be doing all these things in terms of getting them in play to.
Yeah, we have a
citizens?
staff of seven people now that work under Sarah's leadership.
So with setting this system up here right now, what is the total number? And I guess this would be in part, it's a two-part question. One is directed to Mr. Semperman, and the other one is directed to you, Mr. Kim. Would be how many refugees does the city of Cleveland take in on an annual basis, for starters? And then the next question is, what is your capacity and how many refugees, once this is up and going, how many, or if you already started, how many refugees are you getting right now? And how many refugees do you look to get?
Mr. Chairman, to the
forward?
councilman, each of the 3 resettlement agencies have been approved for receiving up to 500 people. It varies. Some people come in as a couple. Some people come in, a mom with 6 or 7 children. But everyone is allowed to receive up to 500. That number is determined by the federal government and through an office within Governor DeWine's office, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, the ORR. That has been the case since probably 2010, Councilman, to the chairman, that number has been set. So 1,500 people a year. During the previous presidential administration, those numbers dropped dramatically, in some cases to 10, 15% of what they were receiving. We're talking maybe, Councilman, to the chairman, 100 people a year. So instead of getting 1,500 as a city, we were getting 300 if we were lucky. In the most recent presidential administration, those numbers have zoomed up. But the challenge has been, and you know this, Councilman, to the chair, when you drop that precipitously, it's hard to keep a staff employed when you were having 500 customers and you're down to 50. So the variation among our agencies has been so disruptive, and that's why places like Catholic Charities and USCRI and now May Dugan are really, they're prepared for whatever happens. And so those were the numbers. There's a federal formula, and I will say that for a city like Cleveland in Northeast Ohio, we punch well above our weight. We're in the top 10 for receiving Ukrainians in the country, in the top 15 for receiving people from Afghanistan. Our quickest growing community is probably people from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And you know this, Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, we're a city that's equipped for this because we're a city that welcomes people from Ward 1 to Ward 17. And so this is just a matter of this organization doing this. But if, knock on wood, if all things are working this year, it'll be up to 500 per agency, so 1,500 total.
If you could just step back in time for me real quick. So for the last, say, 6 years, how many refugees have Cleveland have brought in?
Mr. Chairman, to the council person, I could get you exact numbers. I will tell you in the previous administration, which ended, I believe, on January 20th, 2021. The previous 4 years were, it started out at about 1,200. It went down to, I think at the last year, we were close to 300. And then the numbers started to pick up again, but in the same step. So maybe 500 in 2021, maybe 700 in 2022, and then the numbers are getting closer to last year. And I apologize, I should have those numbers and I can get them to you, Mr. Chairman, to the council person, but last year was the biggest number for receiving people since 1948.
So when the refugees come into the city of Cleveland, how are we counting them in terms of the census?
Mr. Chairman, to the council person, it's a great question. I worked on the census when I had the privilege of sitting on your side of the table. They're counted as any other person who is living and breathing here. The trick, Councilman, to the chairman, as you know, is for many communities of color, our African-American sisters and brothers, for communities that speak Spanish, for people that are maybe new to this country, it's harder to get them to be counted. And so it's going to be really important, Mr. Chairman, to the councilman that we start our census count much earlier for 2030, because in order to get the full effect of what the leadership in the city has done, we're going to need to make sure that we allay any fears. Because I will tell you right now, Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, we undercounted absolutely. We have more people in the city than we counted for, but we have to do a better job, and I'm looking at myself in terms of getting the word out in the 60 or so languages that are spoken. This is not an attempt to evict you. Nobody's looking to, cause you trouble, but that is a big issue, but they are all eligible to be counted.
And Mr. Chairman, one of the things that's really important for me sitting here at the end of this table is how we go about doing it, right? So we know we have the system set up as it is now with the 3 organizations that, Mr. Simperman, you're referring to. How do we, when we put this in place, how do we make sure that we see it out in a way where the refugees that are coming into the city of Cleveland is as productive as we would want them to be, versus being in a situation like Cleveland has a problem. And Mr. Simperman, you know that we have a lot of homeless people now in the city of Cleveland. I'm seeing more tents than I've ever seen before in the city of Cleveland. You can just go down some streets and you can just see the tents lined up. And we've even, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Simperman, started receiving homeless population in our neighborhood, something that we have not seen ever, with tents lined up in some parts of our neighborhood. And we've been out there working with trying to get shelter for the citizens, trying to make sure our people are even coming out, giving them food, giving them money, the whole 9 yards. So the challenge is, as we bring in the immigrants, we would want to know that we have a system or a connection to them, so that they're not winding up being what's the term I'm looking for? Being a load more onto our issues that we already have. So I don't know if you're looking at that moving down. Now, let me say this, right? We have to look at everything. So we have to look at the good stuff too, and we have to look at the bad stuff too. So how do we begin to mitigate that, moving forward? And do we have anything looking forward down the line to potentially mitigate a potential issue if it should arise? So that's a concern for me on one side. The second side is I do understand that bringing in immigrants can renew a neighborhood. Having people with different concepts wanting to join our economy, creating businesses, all those sorts of types of things. So I would just humbly suggest that as we continue to move forward, just not only bringing them in here and making sure they're on the various different programs and subsidy programs and healthcare systems and connected into the CMSD, but we also long-term down the road, how do we get them employed? How do we help them stay employed? And then how do we even have programs in place to help them start or establish a business? And if there's any comments to that, would love to hear the long-term effect.
Councilman, I would just like to say the May Dugan Center has multiple programs going on through our behavioral health programming, as well as, and we're building the staff of the refugee program, so they'll be available, our staff members, between the Trauma Recovery Center, the Education and Resource Center, and the refugee program to provide assistance if any of the refugees are struggling or are, in fear of losing their home.
And do we have, did you want to add to that?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, I'll just say this too. We have a saying when we're all together that to immigrate is an entrepreneurial act. If you can come here, different culture, different language, different systems, some of our sisters and brothers are coming from places where, their infrastructure is much different. And people really make it. When you go to the Natividad Pagan International Newcomers Academy on the border of Councilwoman Santana McCormick's ward, that school currently, Mr. Chairman, to the council person, Cleveland Public School, pre-K through 12, is at 1,000 students. Currently, in their school, there are over 60 languages that are spoken. And Mr. Chairman, to the council person, a bit of a confession. When I used to be in your seat and I had bad days, I would go to that school because you cannot help but feel uplifted by this sense of hope. And these young people, candidly, that are learning English in a matter of 2 years. who are then helping mom and dad and grandma and grandpa too. And it's an amazing part of Cleveland that we don't talk enough about. We also have, Mr. Chairman, you saw on Mr. Traris's, to the councilman, Mr. Traris's thing, day 1 through 90. On day 91, you have organizations like Resource Cleveland, formerly Refugee Response, Building Hope in the City, in the heart of the West Park community, and Asia, Ohio, and Asia Town, in Councilman Hairston's ward, that are then for day 91 post, helping people, making sure the kids are getting vaccinated, helping them make their medical appointments. So there's a real network in Cleveland, Mr. Chairman. And I will say that Cleveland does a better job than most cities in terms of making sure that nobody gets left behind. But Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, I'll conclude and just share with you, when you get into the heart of what the individuals that are coming here have seen, it takes your breath away sometimes. Because the horrors that they've lived in the short life that they have, I'm just grateful they're here in Cleveland, and I'm just hopeful that the life they have here is much different than that which they came from. Mr. Chairman, to the council person.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, lastly, just want to just take the opportunity to thank Mr. Semperman and the May Dugan Center for the work that you do. And I'm certainly not opposed to this. I think this will be a good thing for the city of Cleveland to increase our population, to bring folks in here, and to work with them. I just don't want to see, Mr. Chairman, we bring in a great number of people and then we can't sustain them. And for me, that's important as relates to bringing refugees in. I know we don't have this situation like New York and Chicago. We've been hearing a lot about that. But I think that the city of Cleveland certainly can bring in a great number of people and have a system of support here, in addition to supporting our folks that are already here. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I have no more unreadiness on this particular issue. I return the floor.
Thank you, Councilman Kevin Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the former councilman or to the CEO, what kind of services will you be providing these families, such as food, utilities, housing assistance? Can you talk more about the assistance you will provide to support the families long term?
So HIAS, through the U.S. government, provides a stipend to the refugees for the first 90 days. But in addition, May Dugan Center, we have, one of the reasons why we took the program on, like Joe Simperman said earlier, is that we already had a lot of these programs that are really necessary to make this successful in place. You know, our workforce development program, which is part of, it's a combination between our education and resource center and the refugee resettlement program. Many of our refugees benefit from our food distribution program when they come in for the cultural orientation, as well as our counseling program. If any of them are in need of counseling, then through an interpreter, and many of our staff are bilingual, speaking multiple languages, we provide those services as well.
Okay. No. So what kind of services would you provide as far as housing goes? Would you provide any assistance with housing?
I'm going to let Sarah address that because she.
In terms of housing, we are required to find adequate housing for the family when they arrive. If we don't have adequate housing on day one, we put them in a hotel until we can find a place for them to go. And then the next step is to really get them a job so that they can take over the rent payments as soon as possible. After the first 90 days, their funds run out, so that's where it's critical to have a job so that they can start paying their own rent. Through May Dugan, we also have, after the 90 days, we have a match grant program, which gives a little bit more rental assistance and cash assistance until they have found a job. Sometimes we're seeing some of our refugees with, I think Andy said earlier, whatever the education level was much higher than we anticipated. And so people want to find higher paying jobs and not just entry level jobs. So if you go in the match grant program, it gives you a little bit more time to find the right fit for job, which I think is key. We also have English classes available Monday through Thursday that refugees and we've been doing English classes since like 2016. So those continue, and now we're welcoming the refugees into the classroom as well. Some of the refugees have stated they're interested in earning their GED, so we would definitely welcome them into the GED program when that's an appropriate fit for them. Does that answer your question?
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I simply wanted to add, I've really appreciated the robust discussion today, and I'm very enthusiastically supporting this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 411-2024 stands approved, and we'll go to the full floor this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Keep up the great work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, next up is ordinance number 311-2024 by council members Bishop, McCormick, and Griffin, by departmental request and emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works and/or Port Control as appropriate to enter into a license agreement with the USS Cleveland Legacy Foundation or its designee to install and maintain the Lone Sailor Monument at the northwest corner of city-owned property in Voinovich Park, and to make improvements to the area surrounding the monument for an initial term of 1 year and automatically renewing year to year for a period of up to 25 years unless terminated by either party. Director, Assistant Director Johnson.
To the chair, to the council, we are here to give additional details about the license agreement to install and maintain the Lone Sailor Monument. We have Jody McHugh from AECOM with us, as well as John Hughes, who represents Department of Port Control, and Commissioner DeGennaro will give you additional details.
Thank you. Ms. DeGennaro.
Thank you, Council President and members of the committee. As you mentioned, the legislation would authorize the directors of both Public Works and Port Control to issue a license renewable from year to year for up to 25 years to the USS Cleveland Legacy Foundation to install the Lone Sailor Monument at the northwest corner of Voinovich Park. The monument is a replica of one that is currently housed at the U.S. Navy Memorial in Washington, D.C. It was designed by Stanley Bleifeld, who enlisted in the Navy during the Second World War. The monument is intended to pay tribute to the men and women who serve or currently serve or have served in the Navy, and it's also intended to raise awareness about the future Navy ship, the USS Cleveland, which is currently under construction in Wisconsin and is scheduled to be commissioned in Cleveland in the year 2025. Today, there are 17 replica monuments around the world, with Cleveland being the location of the 18th. The monument is currently housed at the Great Lakes Science Center temporarily and will be moved to Voinovich Park in order to welcome the USS Cleveland to the shores of Lake Erie. In addition to the monument, the foundation will make improvements to Voinovich Park, including new pavers, 4 benches, 2 donor walls, and some landscaping. And the foundation will maintain all of these improvements at no cost to the city. The foundation will also contribute 5% to the annual common area maintenance budget for Voinovich Park. And I did want to mention that the proposal has been fully vetted and approved by the City Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. This was heard in Municipal Services and Transportation. Municipal Services, Councilman Bishop, do you have any questions?
Yes, Mr. President, we fully vetted this in municipal services and recommended for passage.
Thank you. Councilman McCormick?
Thank you, Chair. This piece was relieved out of transportation, but this is a Ward 3 base project, and I had a chance to speak with a couple of folks from the foundation as well. So fully support the statute. The only question, Chair, to anyone that can answer, I'm like such an anti-pavers person because how they never hold up and they tear up, and so I just, versus like a stamped concrete or something, has there been thought on like, this is right on the water, so you're getting storms from Lake Erie, you're getting on the durability of the pavers? That's my only question. This is a great, important statue, but I just want to make sure that the material that's being used can withstand being right on the waterfront.
Sure, we are using high-end Unilock pavers that will be able to withstand those conditions.
Okay, so they're able to, okay. Okay, thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Councilman Joseph Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking here at, do you have any photos of what it's going to look like? I'm looking through here, it's not coming through on my thing as fast as I'd like it. for the monument? So these are going to be plaques?
Last 3 sheets then.
Thank you.
It's on the tablet as well.
Wow. And what is this, is this the Lone Sailor Monument?
Correct.
Is that what you're talking about?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes, that's correct. The Lone Sailor Monument.
And you're going to have, are you going to put all of the brick foundation and all of this work that's right here in that spot?
Through the chair, the foundation, the USS Cleveland Legacy Foundation, will actually be installing all of the improvements, the pavers, the monument itself, some landscaping. There are 4 benches that will, you should see on your diagram there, and 2 donor walls.
Okay, so that's going to be off in the corner. Okay.
Yes, surrounding the statue.
And how much is it, Mr. Chairman, to the distinguished lady? How much will it cost?
In terms of cost, I'll defer to Jody.
The installation cost is $375,000.
How much?
$375,000. That excludes the sculpture, which I think was about $300,000.
It really looks nice.
Thank you.
Will you be doing, Mr. Chairman, tree planting too?
There are no trees. It's just tulips and an evergreen ground cover.
Okay. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 311-2024 stands approved. Please sign on. All right, the next one is, thank you, ordinance number 412-2024 by Councilmember Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to provide for the transfer and amendment to the general fund appropriations in the amount of $3,217,143. And presenting will be our Chief of Finance as well as Ms. Gallagher. Please proceed. Got it right.
Okay, good afternoon, Chairman and committee. So what we have in front of you is Ordinance 412-2024, which does a couple of things. Most significantly, it transfers appropriation out of the non-departmental division, the portion of that division's appropriation that we referred to as the vacancy pool during the budget hearings, and puts appropriation in a variety of different divisions to give those divisions additional personnel, and then also moves $100,000 of below-the-line appropriation to PIO to provide additional music-related programming for youth in the city.
Okay. Conwell's not here, is he? Okay. Just wanted to make sure he did that. All right. So in essence, what you're doing is this was originally what you were going to do with the vacancy pool. You just basically reapplied these positions back to the specific departments. And in addition to that, the $100,000 to stand up the 4 programs that Councilman Conwell's put in place is included in that as well.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any questions regarding 412-2024? Councilman McCord.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair to the Director, is this independent of the dollars that have been identified in the transfer ordinance? In the original 56 million that we used from the HR that we used, is this independent of that?
Yes, through the chair, this is a transfer of the funds that were appropriated in the non-departmental division in the 2024 operating budget, and is now moving those appropriated funds out of non-departmental and into the various divisions that are receiving personnel appropriation to hire additional staff.
Understood. Thank you.
All right, Councilman Casey and then Councilman Mike Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the Director, did you just mention something about $100,000 going to PIO?
Through the chair, yes.
Is that in this book?
Yes.
Can you show me where? I mean, I can't.
Through the chair, it is on page 1, under the right above total general government.
All right. Does this, Mr. Chairman, to the Finance Director, when PIO was at the table earlier today, there was a piece of legislation where the chief indicated that she needed more money than what was allocated in the ordinance that was before us. Does this have anything to do with that?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of the conversation that happened this morning.
Okay.
This is really connected to discussion with Council President and Councilman Conwell as part of the 2024 budget process, where Councilman Conwell was really advocating for additional music programming, and we were paying for that by moving funds out of the non-departmental division into PIO to ensure that there are funds available to specifically apply to that music programming.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Councilman Mike Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues. To follow up on Councilman Casey's line of questioning, Director, where are the music programs going, or the music program going?
Through the chair, the funds are going to PIO. Where those funds actually ultimately are spent will be determined via an RFP process that PIO will run.
But there are four, and PIO in their presentation or earlier this morning, they do have those four listed. And I don't know if she wants to come and rattle them real quick for us now, but there are four designated for $25,000 apiece. I know it's Rainey Musical Institute, Arts Inspire, if you could, Miss, it's on the last page, I believe, or whatever, but here, she can give you the four things.
Through the chair to Councilman Polensek, there are four: Julia DeBargos, Eleanor Rainey Institute, the Music Settlement, and Center for Arts Inspired Learning.
And also be citywide programs?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Good. Yeah.
There's 2 east, 2 west. This is something that is a council-led, what we come up in reconciliation. Every year, Councilman Conwell really tries to work with us and the administration to carve out a $100,000 allocation so that children can have extracurricular activities to go and learn music. He also has in place a terrific program where they can get free instruments and everything as well. So it's a whole program that for the last 3 years, we've been putting in probably about $100,000.
Okay, because, Mr. Chairman, I don't have to tell you what weekend we had in the city with juvenile-related violence, gun violence. So I think we all need to start asking more questions as it pertains to really what's happening with violence prevention, violence interdiction in the city. And so the general question I want to ask the director, so how many folks are going to be left in your swimming pool after we do this?
Through the chair, I'm not sure it's a swimming pool, but
Okay.
there's funding left for approximately 8 to 10 positions after this ordinance.
So all the positions that you asked for to go into the pool, now there will only be, say that again, how many left?
Through the chair, it depends on salaries, but approximately 8 to 10.
8 to 10 left, okay. So knowing the action that you're taking now, you didn't know that at the time we passed the budget that we'd have to fill critical positions?
Through the chair, the process that we envisioned for this initiative changed through the budget ordinance via council amendment, which changed the way we had to approach the work. So we anticipated providing positions to the divisions in more of a real-time nature.
Okay.
And when the requirement to get additional legislative authority for any moves out of the vacancy pool was written into the ordinance, that changed our thinking because we frankly didn't want to, the burden of pursuing 60 different ordinances to move positions was more than it was worth.
Okay. My last question, Mr. Chairman, is on your Community Relations Board, the one downtown district rep. Right now, there are reps assigned throughout the city to the police districts. So you're setting up a special rep just for the downtown district? Just for downtown, what, business area or what?
Through the chair, that's correct, and that will have the benefit of freeing up the individuals who are currently assigned to each district, and particularly the district that overlaps with downtown will be free to spend more time outside of downtown. We'll have a specific person dedicated to downtown.
So, Mr. Chairman, based on that, can you get us a map, an updated map, now that there'll be a specific person assigned downtown, where the other reps are assigned to, and who are the present individuals are assigned to those reps? Because I believe when we had the budget, I believe there was one or two of those districts reps missing. They had not been hired yet. So if you could get us an update as to the present number of district reps and an updated map as to who will be working where. I'd appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councilman McCormick and Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that point, my understanding, I thought that position, Chairman to the Chief, was already existed. Wasn't that Theasia, the downtown representative?
I'd have to follow
I
up
thought
with
that was Theasia.
the director.
So I don't know that that's a new position. So I just was just curious. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilman Jones.
Mr. Chairman, just want to, looking at the Department of Building and Housing, those 5 positions, and you have 4 property maintenance inspectors and 1 principal clerk. Is those property maintenance inspectors? Mr. Chairman, to the director, are they going to be going and doing code enforcement in terms of actual physical homes, not buildings, just straight home properties?
Through the chair, yeah, so this is in addition to the 20 positions that were added to building and housing during the budget process. And these are the entry-level code enforcement folks in building and housing to really give life to residents first.
Well, one of the things I'll say, Mr. Chairman, to the director is that this is certainly needed. I'm just having a tough time right now dealing with, in our ward, with inspections in both the housing arena in terms of building and housing, and in addition to the health. So I know that, there's need all over the city, but we really need some help over there. Some of the things that we're dealing with, we shouldn't be dealing with them, and we've been dealing with them for quite some time. So with adding these positions here, how will that have an impact on me over on Lee and Harvard? We have one of these people to come over there, or 2 of them?
Through the chair, you'd have to talk to Director O'Toole on the deployment of the inspectors, but it does increase the amount of inspectors available to do this important work throughout the city. So I think it will benefit kind of every neighborhood in the city that has these issues in it.
I see. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Point of clarification from Councilman Pulisic and then Councilman Hairston.
Yeah, on page 4, you have Director of Parks, 1 Director of Parks and Recreation for $128,000. Last time I looked, there was no Director of Public Parks and Recreation.
Through the chair, that is correct. This is in anticipation of the planned split of Public Works into sort of not exactly what existed before it was created, but sort of going back to a version of the municipal services and parks split that existed before.
And do you know, Mr. Chairman, when is that going to come to the council?
Through the chair, I believe it's expected to come this month.
Yeah, so they started educating everybody, so everybody is going to start getting the presentation. They have just now, I haven't even seen it yet, but they are just now scheduling council people to discuss what that would look like. So that is just now being proposed. I believe the only one that has probably seen the model yet is Councilman Bishop, but I do know that I'm scheduled and others are scheduled to actually do a deep dive into what it looks like. Of course, we always have to be careful that if we do a certain amount of council members, then it becomes a quorum. So that's why we wanted to make sure that before we bring it to the table, that we give some suggestions about what we think about it as well, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Uh,
on that
Councilman
point.
Jones, just on that point, then I have
Yeah,
Councilman
you
Harrison.
know, I'm so happy to hear that. I've been fighting on that issue day one coming in 2018 about how the department is just too wildly big and how we have lost services in the city of Cleveland because you had one person that was responsible for everything. And in the proposition of it all, we got so bad here at the city of Cleveland, we couldn't do anything right. So it's great to see that the administration, and I applaud the administration for making the move to cut this huge behemoth of a department, slice it in half, you might have to slice it up again, to make it edible and to hold accountable, doing different responsibilities. And so I just, again, will just take this opportunity to say thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you some more. And I would love to set up a time where I can sit down and see what that looks like, because I remember how it used to work. And it was flawless the way it used to work. And so I'm
Councilman, you
glad,
have on
Mr.
that
Chairman,
point,
to see that
'cause I had
the
somebody else on the
administration has
schedule.
taken that in, and they're moving in a direction to cut that department in half.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Anthony Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I saw this, but I didn't know what to read of this. So we're going from a pool to a splash pad. That's what it seems like, with 10 positions being left in the in this pool. So I'm curious of why the administration is now abandoning what they initially set out and was really pushing to have this pool to pull these positions from. If I'm not mistaken, during our many conversations that you all were supposed to fill the vacancies to a point, and then come back to us for us to consider whether the non-critical positions were necessary at the time. It's hard for me to believe that not even a month or two that you're back here asking to fill these positions. As Councilman Polizek indicated, why didn't you add these positions in the first place? You know, you made the case before of why they were not needed at that time, but a month later, a month and a half later, you're back asking us to make them a priority for you and add them back into the budget. Maybe y'all can help me understand this.
Through the chair, I would just note that the final language in the appropriation ordinance that dealt with the vacancy pool was not what we had in mind. And so that amendment to the ordinance changed our thinking about how to handle the pool. And so with the need to get legislative approval to make hiring actions out of the pool added to the appropriation ordinance, it was administratively too burdensome to do that on a one-by-one basis, which is how we anticipated handling the pool without that condition. And so we are doing what we can to allocate resources to meet sort of the strategic needs and the needs of the city, but do so in a way that gives the departments and divisions more predictability about what resources they have.
Thank you to the chair, to the chief. So if you are predicting what you need down the line, what makes it hard for you to come back and get our approval for a department if there are 4 or 5 positions you recognize are a need? I guess through the chair to the chief, I'm not convinced that within a month and a half that is now all of a sudden known that these positions are very much needed and we need to go ahead and add these back to the budget. I just, Mr. Chair, I just don't buy it. You know, if they were so critical, if they were so much of a need, you would have added them to the budget from the beginning. Or you would have at least tried to fill the vacant positions that you already have. Mr. Chair, so I'm not sure what the other members of the committee, how they feel, but I'm just, it doesn't add up. What they say, the math is the math.
Through the chair, so with the amendment to the appropriation ordinance, once the budget passed, we solicited the departments and divisions for their lists of critical positions that they would want to fill during the course of the year, and that they think that they could fill most expeditiously, and that is what's reflected in this list here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I suggest that we do not pass this today, that we require the administration to fill the vacancies that they have in their departments, because there are significant vacancies that they have not filled yet, before we begin to add more positions on or transfer more positions over to the departments, that they need to make an effort to fill the positions that they have vacant, as we discussed at the table when we passed the budget. You know, there was a discussion around critical versus non-critical, and this is exactly what the conversation is leading back to, whether, you know, any position can be determined whether it is critical, or non-critical, or critical. You know, so just my 2 cents, Mr. Chair, on this piece here, as I shared with you prior to today. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that you had some concerns, and I believe that it would be good to move this forward because, quite frankly, they're just going back to what originally was needed in the first place. When we originally went through our operational hearings, the areas that I'm looking at, they're looking at adding these positions are areas that we wanted them to add the positions. So, I mean, I understand your point, and I understand if you feel like you don't want to support this, but I do think that what we looked at when our operational hearings and what we recommended to put these positions in, and them going back to a system that all of us are familiar with, as opposed to us dealing with a system that we did not really approve, I'm comfortable with moving it forward.
Mr. Chair, did we get any sort of explanation on these different positions that they added and the need for them, as we discussed during our finance hearing when we passed the budget?
I don't think with this round, but I do know when we had operational hearings and also when we had discussions around reconciliation, that these areas that they're looking at adding these positions were the areas that we recommended and that they said that they needed the positions for.
Sure.
Quite frankly, I think we should have had them in these locations in the first place. That's kind of why I'm comfortable with this, because this kind of reflects what is more traditional. If you think we need more explanation, then I would be willing to put forth that request to get more explanation from those departments on why they need those positions. But I do feel comfortable moving this forward.
Appreciate it. And I don't recall more parking enforcement officers downtown as being one of our requests, nor do I believe a nurse in the public health department or a project coordinator in another department as being a request of this body, the ones that we needed. So again, I hear you on CBA employees or folks over in compliance or, you know, a downtown district rep and Vision Zero and others, but I don't necessarily, my understanding is not the same as relates to the deep type of positions that are being added, that's been added to the, back to the budget. At the end of the day, I just don't know, why did we go through all of this?
Well,
for us to get back here where we started, Mr. Chair. So I don't need an explanation for anybody else about why this is happening. So this is just my comments, and the chair has responded, so has the chief. You know, again, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around it. He's gave me his explanation, so it's on me now to whether I support his or accept his explanation or not. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Councilman Hairston.
Mr. Chair.
I do have Councilman Jones on that point.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, how fast are we looking, because Mr. Harrison brings up a point, and it's worth noting, right? The point that I'm most interested in is that, yeah, we did approve the budget. We said that we were going to hire so many people from the various different departments. We have this transference right here out of the pool. How fast are we looking to get these people on board and these spots filled?
Chief?
Through the chair as soon as possible. So we have the divisions working on the documentation that they would need to post positions and get them filled. But nothing has been, no new postings are being put up until the ordinance passes. But once the ordinance, if and when the ordinance passes, postings will be put up, and we will move through the hiring process as quickly as we can.
And how fast will we have this new director?
Through the chair, I don't know.
Do we have an
how quickly.
idea who he is?
Through the chair, no.
So we don't know at this point. So you're going to post, so once we pass ordinance 412-2024, you're going to post all of these up on the boards?
Through the chair, to the extent they need to be posted, some are union positions that get posted sort of on the bulletin boards inside of City Hall. Others are postings that are just up continuously, positions that are up continuously, so we don't have to repost it, but we don't necessarily have room in a particular division to actually fill a position that is continuously posted. So whatever the process will need to follow to actually get bodies in the building, we will do that if and when the ordinance passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your deference.
And let me just give an example also with this. For example, the downtown representative, to Councilman McCormick's point, was Ms. Theasia Danley. When Theasia passed away, that position, because it was not filled yet, the administration originally put it in the pool. So when I looked at this list, there were many positions like that that were put in the pool, but actually were positions that I know should be allocated to those departments. Councilman Hairston's right. There are other areas that might need to have more explanation. Like, for example, the reason the nurse position is there is because one of the things we push for is more rigorous lead testing. When you look at some of these other positions, we did want to beef up on trying to get in more revenue around the new parking meters and those kind of things with the downtown areas. But the point is, I don't want to go point for point. Councilman Hairston is right. If you could, it would always be good for these directors to give the justification, because usually we would have had that conversation in the budget hearings, but because we did it different this year is why it caused that, okay? So just wanted to give some more context to it. I do feel comfortable. I do think Councilman Hairston is right. If there's a way to make sure that you can continuously provide more context on why these positions are justified, because throughout the year, operationally, we're going to be checking in on that, and we want to make sure that we follow that track record, okay? So, Joe, if we could have a follow-up on if these directors can have that justification per Councilman Hairston's request. Yes, sir.
I mean, to be quite honest, if we're going to pass this, it doesn't matter
Well,
what the
I just
justification
want you
is
to have-
anyway. So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm probably going to support it because most of them are ones that we do want to see, like CBA folks and some others, right? But you got some that make sense and you have some that don't make sense. So I would have, if this would have included the ones that does make sense, from our many conversations, then I wouldn't have an issue, right? But there's many that doesn't make sense to me, but I'm not going to cut off my nose and spite my face for the positions that we do need to have in these departments. So, I mean, Mr. Teichman don't have to waste his time or get an explanation because once it passed, it doesn't matter anyway. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Teichman. He saved you some work time. Appreciate it. Thank you, Councilman Hairston, but I do agree with your point, and for future reference, the more information we have, the better be helpful. And seeing no other questions, ordinance number 412-2024 stands approved. The only thing that I ask about any departmental reorganization is that we do really follow the lead of our chair. I really put a lot of confidence in our chair to lead a process, and I don't want us to be going in 17 different ways about how we're going to be having discussions about that. So I am entrusting that process with the chair, and we will give him as much support and guidance as he needs, but please run all of the process questions you have through the chair as far as when and how that's going to look and happen, okay? Thank you. And the chair I'm talking about in this case is Bishop. Okay? Thank you, guys. Next up is City Planning Commission. And this is ordinance number 1337-2023, as amended by Council Members Hairston and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of City Planning to enter into an amendment contract number PS 2023*0018 with James Corner Field Operations LLC to extend the contract for an additional year for additional services required by the city and to amend the name and the consultant from James Corner Field Operations LLC to Field Operations LLC. And the amendment is as follows. There is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. In Section 3, Line 1, shall insert not exceed $400,000 and shall, and in Line 2, after 0110-6380, insert no additional funds shall be expended without additional legislative authority. Dated 4/22/24 by Kevin Roberts, Assistant Director of Law. And in essence, ladies and gentlemen, last week we held this one because we wanted further explanation. This is an amendment to increase the contract for the work being done to survey and monitor and look at planning of the lakefront and look at several different scenarios. Part of the $400,000 was because we knew that they went over. The director and the chief is going to give us an explanation and to let us know how we are going to avoid that from happening in the future. And then number two, there is a request to expand the work. This was heard and passed as amended in the DPS committee. However, I did hold it until we got some more clarification because we do take our oversight responsibilities serious. So, Chief, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. Wanted to give some initial remarks following up the conversation last week. Let Director Huang address any items that she has on her mind, and then, of course, open it up to questions of the committee. So first, there was, during the discussion last week, several suggestions that, we need to be particularly careful here because there's the appearance that the vendor came in and bid low to get the work and then said, actually, the work that we said would cost you a nickel would cost you 10 cents. And I just want to reiterate that is not what happened here. As we got into the work, and Director Wong can expand upon this, it became more complicated than we expected. A big aspect of this work that we didn't really foresee field operations participating in was the land bridge design effort. And it became clear early on, or maybe not early on, but at some point during the work that we really would benefit greatly by having landscape architect designers involved in the land bridge design to make sure it was not only a sturdy, strong structure, but also looked nice and was kind of the iconic sort of connecting point between downtown and the lakefront that I think we all want it to be. So it was really just the consequence of the work being more time-consuming than anticipated and adding to what we were asking them to accomplish. Second is, sort of the bigger question of how do we get here? How do we end up in this position? And I think, as I acknowledged last week, certainly this is not best practice, and we recognize that we have put council in a difficult position. Do want to go over kind of at least our perspective of how we got here, and at least help convey that this is all in good faith in an effort to ensure that we can get the project done in a timely manner, and unfortunately had the consequence of putting us where we are. So we, in November, we realized that we were going to go over the contract amount of $500,000. We did introduce the ordinance that is in front of us today in November of 2023. It went through administrative review very quickly, was returned in November of 23 in an effort to legislatively address the issue that we're dealing with right now. But as a practical matter, we had a choice to make. Tell field operations to put their pencils down, stop working, and hope that when we do sort through the legislative process that they actually have the capacity to pick the work back up to keep it on schedule. Or say, keep working, we've introduced the ordinance, we're going to figure it out as we go. And in an effort to keep the project moving, in an effort to complete it as close to on schedule as possible, we chose the latter. We directed field operations to keep working. We knew we had the ordinance introduced, and we were hopeful that in partnership with council that field operations would sort of in good faith continue the work, and that without a guarantee that they would be repaid. And then we would sort through that issue at this table. The process took longer than I think any of us expected, and so we had our first committee hearings in April, and we're here now kind of to resolve the issue. And then there is also, as Council President noted, the piece of the additional work that we are asking field operations to do on a going forward basis, the $140,000 of additional funds to ensure that we have a master plan or a set of master plan documents that are flexible enough to be implemented regardless of the outcomes of all the various negotiations and things that are happening on the lakefront. So I wanted to offer that context. I know Council President and I spoke this morning about this and want to, not attempting to minimize the situation, but also think that there is a good faith explanation for how we ended up here. We know that we can't end up here again, and we'll make sure that on our end, we're certainly monitoring invoices and contract costs more closely and acting proactively to seek legislative authority to amend a contract or add more money to the contract as we need.
Thank you so much. And as I stated to you earlier, it's extremely important to really over-communicate with the chair. Chairman Hairston is very, very flexible whenever somebody communicates and makes them a part of the solution. So really reach out to the chair as well as the council president whenever these issues are, because when it comes to the table, that is not good, because as I mentioned to you before, I'm in an unenviable position of having to explain that to my colleagues. Director usually is very communicative and really works with us on these issues. I know it was a lot of balls being juggled at that time. So, but I will say that it's extremely important for exactly the reason that you said. If anything I've learned in City Hall, you always have to be careful with pattern and practice. If we run into a situation where council starts to authorize X amount of dollars and then consistently go over, and then the next time we're asked to do that and we decide we don't want to do it, and that company B then says, well, company A was allowed to do it, so you're breaking your own practice. And I don't want to run us into that kind of situation. So I'm very consistent about making sure that we stand with the policies, and we just want to be a good partner to be part of the solution and not be pitched something at the table to say we just went over, oops, pass it anyway. So thank you. I do want to also take a minute to acknowledge and introduce Scott Skinner, who's the new executive director of I forget what the name it is, the North Coast, what he said, if he could stand up. So Scott is introduced, and get a chance to know him as well, because he's going to be the one really working close on helping pull the lakefront activities together. So you should really try to get a chance to get to know him. All right, that being said, Councilman Hairston, I know this went through DPS and you've been the closest to it. Did you have any comments? I got you too.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I mean, I'm fine where we are with the amendments that we made, but, this is not a council fault, right? And so, I hear the explanation. It couldn't just be, hey, we requested this information and it won't happen again. But of course, because our legislative process didn't move fast enough and nobody had a discussion, is why the administration chose to make the decision that they chose, is to ask for additional services rendered. If that is going to be the explanation on when we have pieces, then I'll let them sit longer, all right? So if there's something that you all need, if there's something, as I hear from both of you on many things, but this was not one of those things that came to me and said that there was something that needed to be moved quickly. So if the onus is trying to be put on this body as because the process moved too slow or is set, because I read through things very well, okay? So I hear your dates, I hear your comments. I'm gonna just leave it at there, all right? And so I am gonna add additional amendment to this piece, Mr. Chair, as well. Before we go to a vote. Thank you.
Okay, I'll come back to you, and I do want to make sure that Councilman Hairston is right. Due to no action or inaction of council, was this piece held up? So I do want to make that clear, and I don't want that to come across any way but what it is. Okay. All right. Thank you. Next, I have Councilman McCormick, the council person in that area.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I mean, I'll be brief. I appreciate the conversations I've had with the chief and the director over the past week or two. And as I noted, obviously, we've had a lot of conversation about process and all those types of things. And like I mentioned, the last committee meeting, I understand and fully acknowledge those issues, and also the importance of this work and making sure that the people of Cleveland, for once and all, have access to our waterfront and it not being gated off for private parking and other corporate uses. So two things can be true at the same time. I think everything that's been said at this table is very valid, and at the same time, we also need to ensure that we have public spaces for our residents and community members to enjoy on our waterfront, and continuing this work is how we're going to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I have Councilman Polisic, Jones, Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable colleagues, and to the director, first of all, I think it's important that you acknowledge the fact that should not have been done this way. That's the glue that holds us together at this table is transparency and being upfront and honest. And sometimes that's difficult. Believe me when I tell you, being here as long as I've been. But when that takes place, then you can move forward. You can move on. So it's important that you understand the fact that council has control of the purse strings, and nobody can authorize additional spending over $50,000 without the concurrence of the council. So that being said, I appreciate the comments that were made at the table, because again, it's about working together. This is my question about the overall report. Obviously, this company is going to do this report, and at some point it's going to be presented to City Council, correct?
That's correct.
What input does the council have before that day happens? Is this a report in a, is it done in a vacuum? I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one who've gotten emails, who've gotten calls, from residents questioning about the shoreway. There's still, questions whether the shoreway is going to be cut off or all this stuff. The lakefront in general, the connector over between City Hall and the courthouse. But I'm just wondering, is there any effort in this process for your consultant to come in and interview council members, what their thoughts and what their opinions are about the lakefront? I mean, my fear is, Mr. Chairman, is when I first came in this body, and I would come in here on Saturday, and one of the janitors took me up to what they call the penthouse. I don't know if you've ever been up there. They call the penthouse.
The
Ever
mezzanine?
been in there?
I actually have not been in
Okay.
there.
In the penthouse. And the penthouse was full of all these models.
Yeah.
All these models of downtown plans that nothing ever happened. It was, somebody got paid, a consultant got paid, an architect to put all these wonderful plans together for downtown. And it was like, I'm looking at all this stuff, I'm saying, my God, none of this stuff ever happened. So what I'm hoping is that why I'm asking through the chair that council members be interviewed for their thoughts and opinions about the lakefront, because our citizens use it. We visit it. We utilize it. And so I just don't want to see a report dropped on us at the 11th hour saying, here it is, take it or leave it. Because at that point, then we got to vote it up and we got to vote it down. So I raised that through the chair.
Through the chair, first of all, I do want to acknowledge that this was not the best practice, and generally speaking, I aim to be pretty genuine and communicative with no surprises, and this is one where a major project, having a major project where I did not do so. So I want to acknowledge that, first of all, that I take ownership of that. Secondly, with regard to the contract itself, we are at 96% expended. We have not spent a cent over. We had to pause it at this time because we have this, work that we want to show. Yes. But to that point, we do have a draft plan, and we have gone to the community at 30% and 60%, and now we are at 95%. I'm happy to share that draft with the body and meet with you to go over it. I've had a chance to go over it with some of you. Happy to go over it in more detail. We've received close to 5,000 comments from community members, hundreds of surveys, and I do want to speak on behalf of the vendor, the designer, Field Operations, that they have really, I have high standards for consultants when it comes to design, and what they do when they listen and take in feedback. I really feel that they have done their part with community listening. They've been out at Third Space in Glenville in Ward 9. They've been out to the community for various meetings, and that was only a small part of what they did, but I think that in terms of taking in that feedback, they've been really great. So I'm happy to sit down with you, to walk through the plan, to hear your feedback, and be able to coordinate that feedback for the plan.
I just want to say, Mr. Chairman, I believe all members of this body, from my observation, take their roles very seriously. And so it's wonderful to look at community input, community questionnaires, community engagement. But at the end of the day, there's going to be 17 people, because it will still come to us before the end of next year. There'll be 17 people are going to be asked to vote on it. And I think it's important to hear what the 17 have to say, to get their input, to get their thoughts before the final document is put together. That's my own opinion, Mr. Chairman. So I'm just going to post that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I have Councilman Joe Jones, Councilman Brian Casey, Councilman Kevin Conwell. On that point, would you allow, before I move to Councilman Jones, would you allow Councilman McCormick a point on Councilman Polensic's conversation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I yield to
All
my
right, please
distinguished
proceed.
colleague.
Thank you so much, Councilman.
Thank you. To Councilman Polensic's line of questioning, Director, council members are embedded on committees already. I didn't hear that in your response. So if
What
you
was
could, council members are embedded in the lakefront committees already. Is that intention to continue that?
Yes, so to the chair, to the council person, yes, there are council members on each of the advisory committees,
Right.
which are run, and coordinated by Greater Cleveland Partnership. There have been some opportunities, again, to view the plan to date. And I try to keep everyone in the loop. I've emailed out the 60% set. It is on our website as well. And so,
No, I just think that it's
yeah.
important to acknowledge that
It is,
council
yeah,
members
sure.
are
Absolutely.
embedded in the
Thank you.
structure of
Yes.
the plan itself.
Yes.
Okay, Councilman Harrison would like a point real quick, if you allow.
Mr. Chairman, I will yield to the distinguished gentleman,
On that
Anthony
point,
Harrison.
Councilman Harrison, on that point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on that point that Councilman McCormick asked about the committees, there was supposed to be a committee that I was asked to be a part of. There's been not one single meeting since that committee was formed. I'm not sure why. I remember it was canceled like 1 or 2 times and never rescheduled. Ally Love and David, what's the guy who used to work for us?
Yeah.
Just the chair.
So
I
there was
forget
a
his name.
committee that is pretty much housed and coordinated by the Greater Cleveland Partnership.
Right.
Allison Lucchese Love. You might want to talk to her and Marty McGann, because they will have the structures. But as Councilman Harrison said, he's right. I think we had at least every council member, or at least most council members, were assigned to a committee. Those meetings have not happened in a robust way, especially since COVID.
At all. And I think the gentleman who worked, who was our guy in ED? What was his name?
Was it Mr. Ebersol?
Yes, it was, I think he and Ally and McGann were over that committee, and from my understanding, like only one of those committees actually has had a meeting, the one that Councilman Harsh is on, if I'm not mistaken. So I wanted to put that out there. Thank
He
you.
is right. If we could see those committees, because he's right, we need to see. They've been in place for so long, I forget who even houses them.
Sure, and so I can answer what I know about that to the chair through the chair to the council person. So because we had this master planning process, the urban design committee had been meeting regularly, at least until last fall, when we were drafting the 90%. We actually have been pausing all committees at this time because we're still waiting on the ODOT feedback. They have an 8 to 12 week review period. So no committees have been actually meeting since probably last December, in anticipation of the roadway portion, right? Because there's just been, we're waiting on their feedback before we can meet again. However, I will take that feedback back to our working group and make sure that there's at least an update for all the committees to ensure that there's knowledge of where we are in the process.
Okay, thank you. I have Councilman Joseph Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very peculiar piece that we have in front of us right now, and didn't have the realization that I have today about it. And certainly, I'm going to be very careful in how I word what I'm going to word, and how I'm going to say what I'm going to say. But I think this is transparent, and transparency is important on this piece. And for one who has been here going all the way back to the 90s, and having some tough battles here at this table, and dealing with some very difficult issues, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to sit to the side and talk to the director concerning this piece a little bit more about. Don't want to air it out here on this table, but I'm very deeply concerned. I'm concerned for a number of reasons. And the first one is, like my colleague Anthony Hairston stated earlier, the engagement of the city council to be engaged and involved with this piece, and how significant and important this piece is going to be to the city of Cleveland, whether it is positive or it's negative over the long term. I think some of us know what that is, sitting here at this table. I know that we are in a delicate moment in time, but I do want to sit down with you, both directors, and really get a deep dive on this particular piece here. And I just let you know right away, I'm going to be fighting. Now, where you line up on this battlefront is going to be important. And so keeping me in the loop is going to be important, because I represent my citizens, and my citizens have been at this table in years past. And if we have to march down here on this issue, those who are and will be coming down here to talk about this piece and its significance and its impact and what it means on what we've had to deal with in the past is important. So I just want to say, Mr. Chairman, to the director, when I initially looked at this and glossed over this and we passed off on this, I didn't realize the deepness of this particular piece until a couple of weeks ago. So I would love to have the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to talk to both directors concerning this and what this means for our city. I have no further unreadiness, Mr. Chairman, and I'll keep it neutral like that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And thank you for your restraint. Appreciate you. Next is Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the chief and director, did an RFP go out for this?
It did.
Correct. When did the RFP go out?
The RFP went out, I believe it was September 2022.
Was there a dollar amount, Mr. Chairman, to the chief and the director? Was there a dollar amount attached to the RFP?
Yes, there was a dollar amount attached to the RFP,
And how much was that?
$500,000.
And Mr. Chairman, to the director, somebody came back with that and won that RFP for the $500,000 amount?
That's correct.
And Mr. Chairman, to the director, who was that?
That was, at the time, James Corner Field Operations, now named Field Operations LLC. Changed their name.
And Mr. Chairman, to the chief and the director, my last question is, if this passes today, how much will the total be now for the original RFP that went out for $500,000?
So we'll go from 500 to 900.
900? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no other questions.
Thank you. I have Councilman Kevin Conwell.
I just want to make a statement to the chair. When you mentioned Glenville, and did you go there to present to the chair?
Through the chair, we participated with one of our, with Third Space Action Lab. They're a partner of ours. Evelyn and Mordecai, who operate Third Space right on 105th Street.
Right.
And they had an intergenerational lunch, a series of intergenerational lunches where we were invited to present on the lakefront. And the consultant did attend one of those sessions in person to talk more about the importance of the lakefront.
You have to have you come out to my community meeting, because I give Flamenco's, it's my residents' money. It's not my money, it's their money. and they helped to fund Third Space. However, what I'm getting to is that when you go to Third Space and you look over and you mention Glenville, the councilman was not invited. So when they do events, I'm not invited to the events. So I'm letting you know that doesn't make me vote for it because you mentioned Third Space and Glenville.
Appreciate that.
And the only reason I haven't said anything to John and Alifo about it, because I like Evelyn and Morris Kai, but it's not connected to me or me getting out to the residents, letting them know that it's there. So we're going to have you come to my community meetings as well as Neighbors to Neighbors. That's just something off on its own. And I'm not beating up on them or anything like that. I just don't know what it is. John said, give me some money at Famicos. I trust John. I fund it. But I'm not in the mix of them. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is when you're there, it doesn't touch me because I don't know.
Appreciate it.
It's just I don't know.
Yep.
All right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, I will come out.
All right. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number, yes? Oh, Councilman Chris Harsh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a quick question. Through the chair to the chief or the director. The cost overrun, well, let me ask first through the chair. Are there sub-recipients of these funds underneath Cormer or field operations, whichever you prefer to refer to them as?
For the $500,000 contract?
Yes.
Yes, there are other sub-consultants.
And through the chair, are the overruns from Cormer, I guess we'll call them field operations, are the overruns from field operations specifically their work that they're doing directly in-house, or is it from subcontractors that they're working with?
Through the chair, it is all in-house work. Specifically, the majority of it related to connecting the master plan with the $5 million connector project and making sure that that planning effort is interconnected and that the roadway project is solid.
Okay, so through the chair, the overruns don't come from trying to get more public input on the project itself?
There was some from community engagement, a smaller amount, yes.
Okay, and through the chair, was that handled by Cormer or was that handled by a subrecipient?
That was their own in-house
Their in-house
effort, yeah.
I see. Okay. Mr. Chair, this is the first time I've seen the administration come back for extra funds, and I understand that there was maybe a wording issue. We went over this in DPS about having the not to exceed or requiring further legislative authority, but it has opened my eyes to how important it is for this body to include the language shall not exceed and shall require additional legislative authority for anything, because in government, you should get what you pay for, not pay for what you get. And the reason for that is because you need to control costs on the front end rather than have to deal with runaway costs on the tail end. And this has been an eye-opening experience for me. I'm not on this committee, so I won't be voting, but I will, pay very close attention to making sure that this problem is prevented in any legislation that comes through DPS while I'm a member of it moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, and I completely agree, Councilman. That's one of the reasons why we held it, to make sure that we got more clarity, because all of us take our oversight very serious. And, I think your comments about paying for what we, whatever you said, paying up front instead of paying later, I think that's what we need to make sure we do, okay? So thank you so much. Hearing no other questions, ordinance number 1337-2023 stands approved. All right. Thank you. All right, next up is utilities. Thank you. All right. First one is ordinance number 192-2024 by Councilmembers Casey and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to enter into one or more contracts for the purchase of various size PVC and FRE duct line materials for the Division of Cleveland Public Power, Department of Public Utilities for a period of 2 years. Director and
Thank
Mr.
you.
Markovich.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. The Department of Cleveland Public Power seeks authority to go out to bid to buy PVC and FRE to repair, replace, or maintain our duct lines in our distribution system, and they must be in accordance with NEMA standards, $500,000 a year, per year approximately for 2 years. Requesting approval.
All right, Councilman Casey.
Duly vetted and recommended for passage.
All right, hearing no other questions, ordinance number 192-2024 stands approved. Ordinance number 229-2024 by Councilmembers Casey and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to enter into an amendment to contract number PS 2023-317 with Bank Tech, Inc. to remove the hardware support and maintenance service component for payment scanners and payment processing systems for year 2 and to enter into contract with Imaging Business Machines, LLC, for those services for the Division of Utilities Fiscal Control, Department of Public Utilities for a period not to exceed 1 year.
Thank you, Chairman. Simple name change. Bank Tech is changing the name, or has sold off, changed the name IBML for the remaining 1 year of the contract, and then we'll be coming back to seek additional authority moving forward.
Councilman Casey?
Duly vetted and recommended for passage.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 229-2024 stands approved. Please sign on. Ordinance number 312-2024 by Councilmembers Casey and Griffin by departmental, Councilmembers Casey and Griffin and Polensek by departmental request. An emergency ordinance determining the method of making the public improvement of repairing and upgrading the second high to first high regulator at the Nottingham Water Treatment Plant and authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to enter into one or more public improvement contracts for the making of the improvement. Director.
Thank you, Chairman. Regulator does as it sounds. It regulates the pressure between districts. In this instance, it's from second high back to first high. At Nottingham, it is aged infrastructure. It needs full replacement. We budget $300,000 and anticipate it would take approximately 2 years.
Thank you. Councilman Casey.
Duly vetted, recommended for passage, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, seeing no other questions, ordinance number 312-2024 stands approved. All right, next one is ordinance number 330-2024 by Councilmembers Casey and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to enter into one or more requirement contracts without competitive bidding with OPEX Corporation to provide proprietary hardware and software support and on-call maintenance for mail extractors, scanners, and ID assist towers for the Division of Fiscal Control, Department of Public Utilities for a period of 2 years. Director.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The OPEX system is what we use to open and process payments throughout the division, the Department of Public Utilities, all 3 divisions, and of course our other partners. This, in and of itself, the OPEX system opened and processed 1.9 million payments last year alone. It is integral to how we do business. Unfortunately, it is proprietary. And therefore, once we picked OPEX, we must maintain OPEX, which includes the necessary software upgrades, et cetera. 2 years, anticipated cost $155,000. Request approval.
Thank you. Councilman Casey.
Duly vetted and recommended for passage, Mr. Chairman.
All right, seeing no other questions, ordinance number 330-2024 stands approved. Please sign on. We'll now move to Public Works. Thank you so much, Director. Thank you so much, Commissioner. One day we want to hear about the new technology and the new testing you're going to be doing out there on the crib. So looking forward to that. Margaret Vicious. All right. Public Works is up, and the first one that we have is ordinance number 305-2024, as amended by Councilmembers Bishop and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works to apply for and accept a grant from the Cleveland Guardians Charities for the baseball and softball summer youth program. And the amendment states there is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. In section 2, at the end, add RQS 7004 RLA 2024-39. This was done March 21st, 24th by Kevin Roberts, Assistant Director of Law. Assistant Director and Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair, and to the committee. We are asking for approval to be able to enter into a grant with the Cleveland Guardians for $80,000. In the past, the Guardians would we would actually do purchases, and the Guardians would actually pay for those purchases for us. Now they're not able to do so. So as opposed to us sending invoices to them, they are not able to do that anymore. They are now going to send a check to us in the form of a grant. So we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing. It's just that instead of the Guardians paying for it, we'll be paying for it through our purchases. I have Commissioner Ginson Tanner here to explain any questions that you may have about the grant.
Thank you.
Through the chair to the committee, yes, this acceptance would allow us to purchase uniforms, equipment, all of the equipment we need for our baseball programs for kids, all the way up. This will also allow our kids to play for free. Last year, we had a total of 51 teams through the Division of Recreation. We serviced 784 kids in this program. So as the director mentioned, we are just receiving the $80,000 instead of invoicing the Guardians to pay for the purchase that we made through the division.
Great. Okay. Let me start out with Public Works and then Councilman Polensek. Sure.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we fully vetted this and we recommend it for passage.
All right. Thank you. Councilman Mike Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the commissioner, to the assistant director. So let me get this straight. The Guardians are writing a check to the city of Cleveland for $80,000, correct?
Through the chair to the councilman, that's correct.
Okay, and then we're able to go out and buy the equipment for the Muni baseball teams.
Yes, not for Muni, for Division of Recreation, yes.
Okay. Outside of Villa Angela St. Joe's, are there any other high school baseball teams in the city playing at any of our fields?
Through the chair to the councilman, I want to say yes. CMSD plays on our fields. Yes.
Lincoln West still has a team?
Yes.
They got to be one of the few left in the city.
Through the
High
chair to
school
the
team.
councilman, no, I believe it's a number of them. Rowe.
Of high school?
Yes, high school, Marshall. There's a number of high school.
Hey,
teams
all
on the
of them.
field.
Then why, Glenville doesn't have a baseball team. Collinwood doesn't have a baseball team. Ginn doesn't have a baseball. Why some schools have, do you know why some schools have baseball teams and some schools?
Through the chair to the councilman, I do not.
So that's something I would have to address to them.
That's correct.
Over there, that wonderful CMSD. Okay.
Yeah.
Is this funding enough for your Muni program?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes, absolutely. Last year, we spent roughly $72,000 of the $80,000 grant.
Okay.
And it covered our entire program through the Division of Recreation.
Because I can remember, baseball was so prevalent in our neighborhoods in the day, and that it isn't. It's not like it used to be. And we got to all figure out how to get it back so our kids have opportunity, especially for scholarships. So that's something we need to be talking about and thinking about and figuring out how to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. And just if I could on that point, I know I mentioned it a few weeks ago, but are we able to drag those fields over at St. Luke's? Because we know that the high school kids usually dominate the newer, good fields, but the smaller fields I know is a little bit challenging. I know that's in Ward 4, but you know how I feel about Zelma George. So if we can make sure we drag those fields, there's 2 fields, I think it's 4 and 6, because the other ones, the high school kids, Benedictine and some of the other kids usually play on those.
You're speaking of the Luke Easter Fields?
Yeah, the
Okay.
Luke Easter Field.
Okay. Make sure we get it.
And VA's field to that as well, at Humphreys.
Humphreys?
VA.
All right. Thank you. Okay, seeing Councilman Conwell.
With Councilmember Mike Polensek, how can we get and cultivate, like, when you go to Glenville football field, it's hundreds of children there playing football, to the chair, playing basketball over there, and we start, like in June, July, August. They're not out there in the streets. And baseball teaches character. It's not just playing baseball or swinging at a ball. It teaches teamwork, character, practicing, self-esteem, grit, all those kind of things. And we've lost it, not losing it, but we lost it. How do you get them? Like when you watch professional baseball, you don't hardly see African Americans playing baseball. Through the chair, how do you get us back into the game?
Through the chair to the councilman, that's one of the reasons why the Cleveland Guardians is such a great partner. They understand that, baseball is kind of dying, and they stepped up to the table and said, 4 years ago, stepped up to the table and said, listen, we're going to give you funding to take care of the baseball program in the city of Cleveland. So with this funding, all of our recreation centers recruit for baseball. We push heavily to try to get kids to play the sport. We do understand a lot of them like to dribble the basketball instead.
Dribble, yeah.
But this is an effort that the entire Division of Recreation is pushing, and we got the support of the Guardians to get it done.
So you guys have a plan to do some outreach? Have you increased the number? Because I'm just going to say it, not just saying kids. African-American young males today really don't play baseball. So, where you at? What are you thinking?
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, I can tell you that last year we were roughly around 44 teams. 2022, 44 teams, we're up to 51. So we are starting to get kids to come back and play baseball, and we're talking about girls and boys picking up the ball and picking up the glove. It's just a continued effort, trying to get kids into sports. And we understand that baseball is one that is, not a lot of kids gravitate to originally because they see the LeBron James and they see, their idols, picking up the basketball. But we as a city and as a Division of Recreation and our partners, Guardians, we are pushing solely to get baseball started in the city of Cleveland again.
Yeah, because we don't have a baseball team, do we, through the chair at Glenville?
Yes, you do.
We do?
Yes. Through the chair to the councilman, actually, you have, I want to say, 3 baseball teams at Glenville.
Out in DuPont?
Not out of DuPont, out of the Recreation Center. Yes, you have baseball teams coming out of Glenville. Yeah, you've always had baseball teams coming out of Glenville. Yeah.
And we start, who manages?
Through the chair to the councilman, and in fact, your center manager is a baseball gentleman, Sam Woodfolk. He played baseball before he played basketball.
Get out. Sam played baseball, man. And is Sam on the baseball team?
Yes, through the chair to the councilman.
We need that info. So where they practicing at? Over there where the baseball diamond is at?
Through the chair to the councilman, I believe they practice right behind the center in the grass field.
Yeah.
But the games are played at, various fields throughout the city that we permit.
I don't see no championships. We win everything whatever we do at Glenville. Huh?
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, is it about the championships or about getting the kids to play?
Well, we teaching them to win because we're teaching them character, man. We're teaching them character, and winning is part of character and self-esteem and all those kind of things also. Like when you go to Ginn, when people like to say the division he's playing in, I went to see Ginn work with these young men. It was 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the young males were looking at him and with so much respect. And he was teaching them about character, not just football. Football is to carry it. And he was teaching them character and how to be a responsible man and how to honesty, credibility, and integrity through football. All those kind of things. And we could teach that through baseball as well.
Absolutely.
Well, Mr. President, how you did with the rites of passage. You guys used to do that. What was that, in the 90s, back in the 90s, you and Eric. But that's what he's doing. Good program, great program. We could do that in baseball. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions? All right, seeing no other questions, ordinance number 305-2024 stands approved. Please sign on. Next ordinance is, thank you. Next ordinance is number 307-2024 by council members Bishop and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the purchase by one or more standard and requirement contracts for the purchase, lease, or lease with option to purchase of various on-road vehicles, apparatus, and off-road equipment, cabs, bodies, and accessories, equipment, and other aftermarket items necessary to equip the vehicles authorized for their intended purposes, including vehicle rehabilitation, training, and inspections as needed for the various divisions of city government. Director and Commissioner Brown.
Thank you, Council Chair. The purpose of this legislation is for the Department of Public Works to position itself to be able to purchase equipment to enhance our resurfacing program. In the next year, we plan to take the entire program over. This year, we want to be able to get ready to position ourselves to be able to purchase the equipment to do so. I have with me Commissioner Brown to talk about any equipment issues or any questions with that.
Thank you. Commissioner?
So this equipment is in addition to what we already have in our inventory, and this will allow streets to increase the number of paving crews that they deploy on a regular basis.
Sounds like a winner. Councilman Kevin Bishop.
Yes, Mr. President, we fully vetted this in municipal services this morning. We recommend it for passage.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Pulisic.
Mr. Chairman, I just had one question to the Assistant Director, my honorable colleagues, and to the Commissioner. With the addition of this equipment, how much in-house resurfacing of residential streets will be able to do?
So through the chair to the councilman, whatever we have done this year with the city crews and with contractors, our goal is to be able to do that entirely through the Division of Streets.
So you're telling us at this table, the administration's goal is to do all residential streets in-house?
Through the chair to the councilman, that's correct.
Set for what, next year?
It's for next year. Through the chair to the councilman for next year.
Okay. Well, the proof will be in the pudding. I can remember when we always did it in-house, and then it went outside, and that's when we start having problems, is we lost control of quality and fit and finish. So if this is what you're saying is moving it back will provide those opportunities to have a better finished product and a longer lasting product, then I'm all for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
All right. Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to speak in support of this legislation. I appreciate the department getting as much in-house as possible. I'll speak from my experience, Director. I can't speak for anybody else. But the projects that our folks do, I don't have problems with the ADA cracking stuff like I do with the consultants. I don't have the neighborhood issues like I have. I mean, it seems like our folks are more conscientious. When my residents come out to talk to them, they engage with them. You know, I don't have ADA ramps falling apart in 6 months. So I'm just not calling out any specific company. I'm just saying that I believe from experience that our folks in-house do a really good job. I think they're more conscientious of the work they do. Again, this is just one person's experience, but I hear obviously about these things when they happen.
Yep.
So I'm happy that we're making this movement. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other questions regarding ordinance number 307-2024?
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Anthony Hairston.
We buying more street sidewalk sweepers?
Through the chair to
They
the
already
councilman.
know.
So
Don't. Just I don't want you to tell everybody. 'Cause, all right, that's between. No. See what I'm saying? No, I'm kidding. We'll
it's a
talk
work
about
in
it.
progress.
There you go, Commissioner. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 307-2024 stands approved. Please sign on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least is the Office of Prevention, Intervention, and Opportunity, Youth and Young Adults. And if Chief Sonia Pryor-Jones and the illustrious Eugenia Cash could join us at the table. What's she limping for?
She hurt her foot.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Ordinance number 313-2024, as amended by Council Members Santana, Bishop, and Griffin, and Hairston by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance on behalf of the Office of Prevention, Intervention, and Opportunity for Youth and Young Adults to employ one or more professional consultants to design and implement projects to support the transformation of city recreation centers into trauma-informed neighborhood resource and recreation centers, to develop and provide programs and activities for youth and their families to serve as tools to prevent violence, develop skills and knowledge to overcome challenges associated with trauma and toxic stress, and to create opportunities for youth and their families to live quality lives for a period not to exceed a total term of 18 months with one or more options to renew for an additional total term not to exceed 18 months exercisable by the Director of Finance. And an amendment was proffered that there is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. Number 1, in Section 2, Line 1, after shall, insert not exceed $1,377,590 and shall. That was done on 4/22, signed by Patricia McGinty Aston. Director, Chief, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. I first want to point out to our members who were at the joint committee meeting, thank you, Councilman Bishop and Councilwoman Santana. We did correct the materials that are in front of you. We found where we had the discrepancy, so I just wanted to point that out. If you look on page 7, which shows our 2024 capacity by contract, you will note an update for Art House now shows $5,505 is being requested as a part of this ordinance for a total of $1,377,590. And if you look on the page 10, you will see that we've added a line under 50,000 contract, which is already in process for the difference of $24,495. So that's how we would have gotten to the 30,000 that you saw in the materials earlier today. So thank you, Councilman Casey, for pointing that out, and we've made that correction.
Thank you. This was heard in Workforce and DPS, so I'll start out with Councilwoman Santana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I let you know about the committee, I'm curious to know, now that you found that difference, what happens with the amendment?
It's the same amount.
It's still
Oh,
the
it's still
same.
the money? Oh, okay. I thought you said it was $25,000 difference.
Okay.
On the document,
Oh,
the
okay.
document was
Got it.
incorrect.
But the legislation is fine.
But
Okay.
yes, the legislation is fine.
So, Mr. Chair, fully vetted and approved for passage by Workforce and Municipal Services. This morning, we heard it.
Thank you. Councilman Bishop.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we vetted this and recommended for passage.
Thank you. Councilman Polinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues. I was just wondering, why didn't this come before public safety?
It was a joint committee that actually went in front of Workforce and Public Works, and I'll be honest with you, probably, I don't have the answer for that, but
Okay.
that's something we need to have a conversation. Now, I will tell you that one of the things that Ms. Pryor-Jones has been trying to work through since we've been here is where does her committee actually lie?
Okay.
And part of the challenge is because some things are prevention, some things deal with the physical space of recreation,
Yes.
and some things are developmental and workforce related. So it kind of touches all three, but this one, because it was mainly directed towards recreation and youth development, I believe when, and I have to be honest with you, I'm having a memory lapse, but I think when Alan reached out to me, I told him to just do a joint committee for that
Okay.
one.
Well, again, Mr. Chairman, and I mentioned it before, I don't have to tell anybody what kind of weekend we had here.
Right.
The number of young people shot, the violence that we've seen in the city. And we're funding a lot of programs, but I'm not seeing the end result of it. And so at some point, we've got to start asking some serious questions. I've said repeatedly, my problem is not at the rec center. My problem's in the street. The problems are in the street in Glenville. That's where we're experiencing the problems. And I mean, so we got 4 music programs on here that I don't see touch the northeast side, but then that was passed, talked about earlier. I don't know, if I have, if I have to start drilling down on this stuff, because I can't see where we're having the impact in the street. And if someone can show it to me, then I'm willing to accept that. But I don't see it in the statistics, the violence, the number of juveniles being arrested. I'm not seeing the end result. We're funding all this stuff, and I'm not seeing the end result of it. So someone's got to show me where we're having successes. That's what I want to see. I want to see the measurement of where we're having success. Someone's got to tell me that. Show me that.
Mr. Chairman, you got me.
I mean, I want to see the end result. We're losing too many kids. Too many kids are falling. They're going down the wrong path. We got to do something different here. We're funding a lot of violence interruption, but I don't see the violence being interrupted. There's the problem. So that's where I'm at.
Anything else?
Well, and do we ever get a quarterly report on anything as it pertains to how many kids are being serviced in our neighborhoods? If my life depended, I can't remember the last time when I got a report.
Chief, do you have any of those reports that can give us regular updates on how many unduplicated children we're serving and what areas are being served? Usually, most departments will make it and provide it ward by ward so that we could at least know what impact we're having as far as that goes.
Through Council President, Chair, to the council, we are happy to provide you with some updated reports. One of the things that we shared earlier today, we have 2 new software systems coming online to assist us with this. In partnership with Recreation, they have Civics 2.0, which will allow for us to really do better deep tracking across all of the recreation centers. And the PIO office has a new Ecovia system, which will allow us to do better case management specifically for the work that our social support specialists are doing. I will also add to that we, during the course of our budget hearing process, provided data for our up-to-date items, and we can send that back out. I do, though, want to make sure that Councilman Polenzek feels heard. I heard his comments as it relates to our young people, and he's right. Too much is happening to our young people in our communities. What I would help people think about is it is even more critical that we double down on safe, quality programming for all of our young people to lessen the load of the work for the people who are out there actually interrupting violence. And so from a preventative measure, all of the data tells us nationally it is critical that communities have high quality, comprehensive out-of-school time programming for young people, particularly in the hours of the day between school and between most parents get home, so that they are doing something engaging and positive. Will these programs help save everyone? No, they won't. I will not tell that lie. But will these programs make a difference in as many lives of kids as they possibly can? They will. And not only does it take this programming, but it also takes the kind of collaborative crisis management and support efforts that our social support specialists are doing with many other partners that are out there working to engage our young children. So I just wanted to say you are heard, and we are definitely doing our part and willing to do as much as we can.
And Mr. Chairman, I just hope in the future then, if we need to have a joint committee involving safety, then so be it. But we're going to start asking some serious questions, asking for statistics, show us numbers, show us where we're having an impact. That's what I want to know. I want to make sure we're doing everything we can to address this juvenile violence problem in this city. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I have Councilman Joe Jones and Councilman Kevin Conwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Chief Pryor Jones, I had the opportunity to hear the presentation in the joint committee as I was sitting in another meeting elsewhere dealing with priorities and how neighborhoods in the city of Cleveland receives funding. And I really appreciated your presentation. It was co-chaired by Chairwoman Jasmine Santana and Chairman Kevin Bishop. And as I was listening to your presentation and now have an opportunity to be able to look at some of these numbers, it seems like, I don't know, what page this would be, but it's a page that talks about the capacity by contract, 2023 capacity by contract, with a total of a nominal amount of 2.6 million and over 3,189 students served. These are your various different partners. Is this a number of different programs, or is this all up under one contract?
Through the chair to Councilman Jones, these are different contracts across these different partners. So each line, and this would be page 6 from 2023, each line shows the name of the organization, the amount of their contract, how many sites and how many seasons, as well as the maximum capacity that those contracts are able to actually register and engage a number of children.
So for an example, where it says after-school all-stars at $221,679, you're servicing 8 sites, then it dash seasons times 25. Can you explain that for me so I can understand what that means?
Yes, so basically that's letting you know that they are able across the seasons and the sites that they worked in to cover 25 individuals, totaling 200.
Okay, so that's just for one season.
Actually, they went across multiple seasons, and so most of the contracts in PIO are a full 1-year contract, and most of the recreation programming has a season, spring, winter, summer. And so that's across all of the seasons for that contract year.
Okay. And so then we have another capacity by contract too. So I'm looking at, when I look at all of these different contracts, if you could help me understand, I know that, is these all of the contracts, Mr. Chairman, to Chief Pryor Jones, that we have for all the programs as it relates to coming out of your department? Is this your full summary report?
And so these are all of the contracts from 2023 dollars.
For who?
From the 2023 funding on that page,
Okay.
on page 6. That's just showing you what happened last year. And then the next page, page 7, is what we're doing in 2024.
Okay. So in your department, out of all the programs that you have, this would be considered the representation of that?
Specifically for what we refer to as expanded programs.
Okay.
Now, we will have some new contracts and new partners in the work that we're doing through the Department of Justice grant that'll come online later. We had our first RFP go out for that, and we're anticipating 2 more RFPs in 2024, and that would be a different group of partners. And we would be coming back to the table and to council members sharing that when those things are ready to roll out.
And Mr. Chairman, to Chief Pryor Jones, how long have you been working for us here at the city?
Just a little more than 24 months.
So you've been here for about a couple of years at least, and 4 months. Okay. So I had a conversation earlier. I had caught the tail end of the session, and I hate I missed you coming in. But I talked about the state and the condition of Cleveland's communities, and somewhat touching on what my distinguished colleague Mike Polensek is talking about, and I understand his frustration. When we sit here at this table and we do pass off on things, sometimes we'd like to see them happen right away, because the problem and the issues are so grave and so deep, and has a negative connotation to it in some areas. I know that some of these programs ain't going to be able to reach some of these folks in time that we would like to see them reach the people that we are projecting it to reach. One of the things that will help me at this end of the table to understand better about your department, about what you do and how you reach out, would to be to know all of what is being offered. And we talked about this, about recreational facilities in the city of Cleveland. If we are to be serious about improving the conditions in our neighborhood, then there must be a marketing and outreach to re-engage the citizens of Cleveland back into our recreational facilities. Because there was a time that we shut those centers down, and the population has not went back to those centers. And the challenge, Mr. Chairman, that I would share to you and just humbly suggest to you, Ms. Jones, and something I said to some of the teachers and in CMSD and the various different programs that they have, There's all of these programs. So it would be nice that we come together and understand all these programs that's being operated out of these recreational facilities. And I did talk to the Commissioner Gisentainer about that. What is being offered and how do our young folks have an opportunity to take advantage of that? And how do we communicate that efficiently and effectively? Because I've been in some of the schools, Mr. Chairman, and I've had the opportunity to go to some of our recreational facilities. And I'll tell you, sitting here as a council member, I'm highly disturbed. I'm unsettled. And Mr. Chairman, my heart is broken. Literally. When I see the conditions, and we're talking about bringing in refugees into the city, when I see some of the conditions of the citizens who live in this city, some of them look like refugees. It's really sad in some areas in my neighborhood that I can see that condition in young folks. And I can see the situation deteriorating so bad. And these young people, some of them, most of them, because our schools are so messed up, and when I say messed up, we don't even have neighborhood schools anymore. Everybody's shipped into the neighborhoods. It is probably the worst failure design ever created for failure in the city of Cleveland is to have school systems, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, that is so dysfunctional. And so when we talk about these programs, what I'd like to see, let's go back to the basics. Let's go to programs that really reach out to kids, talent shows. How do we bring young folks in the community together with something that's positive? Essay writing contest and have money allocated for those who have the best writing skills for whatever the theme may be. And we could do something as simple as, you know, what can we do to make a difference and fulfill the dream of Martin Luther King Jr. essay contest? That's right off the head. Something to get young folks engaged in doing something positive with their time and then getting paid. Those are kind of programs, Mr. Chairman, I think that we should promote. We should promote competitiveness in neighborhoods with talent shows. You know, Glenville versus Ward 1. I think we'll beat Glenville now. All right. You know, or Ohio City talent show versus something that brings different people together and really bring young folks together is going to be important. And it reaches out and it brings neighborhood together. So my suggestion, Mr. Chairman, is programming like that and maybe sitting down with us as council members who can go back with some ideals, getting the teachers involved in the school facilities because they used to be the ones who would be the chair over those and look over that stuff, those essay contests rather, and be a part of those. I don't know if you were here, I presume you're a Cleveland native. So you remember Mrs. Ross' talent show?
Yes.
Oh yeah, wasn't that a great talent show?
Fifth grade.
You was her who?
I had Mrs. Ross for 5th grade.
Oh great, she was wonderful. I mean, to go to her talent shows and to perform, and I was one of the performers in her talent show too, to have an opportunity to express yourself as a young person is important, and we need to start getting back to some of those things. And then I would just suggest, as we have a new superintendent, we need to change the mess they have up in the school systems now. The way the school system is organized is the biggest mess of failure that I've ever seen. It was created to destroy education in the city of Cleveland. Young people are not learning in that environment. When I can go up into that environment and see the mess and the nonsense that I see in these schools, new schools and a whole lot of mess, it is the messiest place I've ever saw. And it doesn't matter where I go. I haven't went to the west side yet, but these east side schools, they're horrible. And I'll tell you, if we don't do something about it, we've already lost all of them that's in there now. And if we don't do something about it, if we don't get serious about education in this city, if we don't take advantage of the monies, this one-time money that we've been talking about, these ARPA funds, millions of them, we're in trouble. So I just want to say, Mr. Chairman, I would love to work with you, Chief, to talk about how we can face this. Now, some folks may not like what I got to say about it, but I'm going to say it anyway because they need to hurt a little bit on it. because they shouldn't be destroying our kids and the future of this city by not doing their job as educators and educating our young folks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Kevin Conwell, Councilman Brian Casey, Councilman Charles Lott.
You know, here's the thing about the programs here. You don't really have enough. See, it take a while. The children, things have been taken away from the kids for so long, and then your program comes, and you're trying to make a change. It can't change overnight. It cannot change overnight. You just can't do it in one, 2, or 3 meetings with Cleveland City Council with the outcome measures. Because what you're facing is absentee fathers in the household. What you're facing is you got a lot of single mothers, 3/4 at the head of the households ran by females. So sometimes the mom is working from, let's say, can't see in the morning to can't see at night, okay? And she has to work 2 jobs with this high inflation going around. You go to the grocery store. We used to could go to the grocery store with $100 and walk out with 4 bags of groceries. Now you come out with half of a bag of groceries. You know, I mean, the children have to see success every single day, and they got everything is looking at them. Now, what we have to do at this table, they got to see us visiting their schools also, and then we take what the chief has, we put it in our newsletters. We talk about it all the time. We help to promote it. Like they would say, local store marketing. We got to push it out there. And then some of the people that come to the table and they receive funding from us, we need to tell them that they need to put dollars into this. Or they need to visit Collinwood, Glenville, JFK, so that they can see them. It can't just be the chief doing this by herself, and then we end up complaining, and then we don't step in to help out. I have a meeting tomorrow morning at the Union Club with some key stakeholders, and we're talking about youth, the stuff that Joe Jones is talking about, and how do we bring that in to put some children involved with it. And we're meeting with Jeremy Johnson and Director Rhonda Brown at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow morning at the Union Club, discussing that and talking about key stakeholders and how do we get places like University Hospital and Cleveland Clinic to ante up also to help out. You can't just look, the numbers that she have here of children participating is not even 0.1% of the children in the city of Cleveland. So how can you can't even compare and contrast those numbers. It's not even 0.1%. It's not even a drop in the bucket. But we're trying to do something. And let me say this, if one person benefit, if one person become a successful person, the entire city benefits. The entire city benefits right there. We can't afford one kid to be shot or hurt. And when you have these programs, guess what? They're doing away with idle hands. They're doing away with idle hands. The kids, instead of, like my mother told me, a next door neighbor was complaining that I was playing the drums late at night. You know what she told that next door neighbor, Councilman Mike Palencia? At least I know where my son is at. At least I know where my son is at. And his son moved forward and toured playing music professionally, has an MBA, doing all that, because I didn't have idle hands. I did not have idle hands. And some of the programs that you see in the short run, you say, oh, this is not doing nothing for them. But in the long run, when they get in their 20s and 30s, it's going to benefit them. Sometime it would not happen at 15 or 16, but it would happen, a delayed reflect will hit them later on. It will hit them. And the thing about the arts that is showing right now, it builds character, just like Ginn team with football. It builds character, because this kid knows when he or she tests their reading scores, it's going to go up. And it builds the character of self-esteem. It builds the character of honesty, credibility, and integrity, because they're practicing. And when you practice your instrument, you know that when you get home, you're going to practice and do your homework. And then when you go to your study team, you've already work doing your homework, so when you go there, you are prepared. So this right here is not something that will turn out overnight to change people, but it's going to happen in the long run. So what we got to do, we got to understand the way. We have to understand the way, and we reach and we help. We help the children out. It's the easiest thing to do is say, well, it's not turning over right now. I'm not going to help. This is what I did. When they told me, I visited some children, and they said, you know, I can't get any musical instruments because the musical instruments cost more money, Mr. Councilman. Went out, started a drive, and collected over $100,000 worth of instruments with Julio, not with Julio DeBurgo, but they was with us, with Arts Inspired Learning, and we gave the instruments to the children so the children would be at home practicing, so when they finish with their arts, learning from Musical Settlement, learning from Julio DeBurgos, they have instruments right there. Right there. So it would have been easy for me to go back to Sonia Pryor Jones and say, they're not doing anything with the instruments. They're not learning anything, but you got to sit back and we got to use our clout and influence to help. We got to do that. We have to. I go over to, on the west side, the Julio DeBurgos. Look, watch them. They're doing a great job over there. And I asked Lopez, I don't complain. I said, what do you need? What do you need? She have a great program that she's doing in Ward 9 over in Mocha. Did you know that? She's over in Mocha, Ward 9, doing a great program with children. I'm not complaining. I'm saying, where do you need help? When I was with Brian Casey area over there with Marshall, I know he's a great council member, but I was doing a clinic, playing with them, and they said, Mr. Conwell, we need $7,000. I'm not going to tell them, go see your councilman. Heck, they see me. These our children, our children. I went out and I said, here's $7,000 that you can have, so when you guys go to Washington, D.C., I did not care if the children are from Glenville, although I love Glenville. I did not care if the children are from Glenville or over there, John Marshall. These are children. And when children see that we care about them and they know that you care about them, then they will even do better. They have to know their parents and that we care about them because we live through our children. I don't care if they're in Marshall. I don't care if they're in Palmer Heights. I don't care if they're in Westlake or whatever. These are our children. We have to help them out. We have to help them out. And the easiest thing to do is to read this here and say it's not working. How do you know it's not working? One of the hardest things to measure is prevention. But if that kid is playing the drums on Pierpont at night, that kid is not out there in a gang, and you don't see the kid is not being out there in a gang, you see prevention is right there, but it's hard to measure it because the kid is practicing, and then when he or she get finished practicing and doing their homework, they're playing chess. They're playing chess. So it's benefiting them. And you know what else they're doing? It's not even on the paper. Council members, they're teaching their friends. Hey man, can you play chess? No, I can't play chess. Let me teach you how to play chess. One person may be teaching 5 people how to play chess because they learned it in this program right here. Because they teach each other. So it's not just to evaluate it from here, it's other things that we do. I'm talking this, I said that I took a program, you were with me, Cash, to a national level. The fatherhood piece. We worked there and I got the dads to work with the children. This stuff means a lot to me, what they're doing here. This means a lot, and it's going to take time. We probably had to get some TANF money to help with it also. Temporary assistance for needy families, and they got to know that you care. Some kids will come to the programs, but they got to see adults caring for them. Through the chair, we need like a chess tournament that they can, I play chess. I love playing chess. It's a game of gambit. But you have chess people here, but they can compete, and that we had a chess tournament. Chess is good, it's stimulating for your brain and everything. We need that through the chair to the chief. that we can have that, some outcome measures that people can see. A lot of them don't know unless they can see. And like what Councilmember Joe Jones mentioned, if you had a talent show and you had the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame working with you, then we could cultivate some students, and then through the chair, they will compete, and you have 7, 8, 9, 10 bands, maybe competing for a recording contract or something like that, and then that way you can get more people back in there. One thing with the arts is that the school system killed the arts back in the 90s when they cut the program out. Dr. Morgan said he's not going to do that ever again. He's a brass player. He plays, I think, tuba. You know, he said he's not going to kill the arts. I mean, think about it. I know I'm going long, but I'm talking about these arts. A council president, when you see little kids in your neighborhood walking with backpacks with a trumpet, you see that little kid, or a little kid with violins right here. They're learning how to play the violin. Learning how to play a violin. This kid is right here. This kid could be out there doing anything in the streets, but he or she is sitting back learning how to play the violin. And you see them put it right in their little backpack, and you see them carry it right down Larchmere to their house. How does that make you feel? It make you feel good. It make you feel good because you see the child is doing that. And they're doing something, and they're doing something positive. But what are we going to do to help to make it better for them? And that's just where I'm at on that here. I got one more question, I think, but I mean, 9:30, I'm at the Union Club talking with people about the arts, and we're going to use whatever resources I can to help. We got to do that. Job and career readiness, I said I was going to help you. No one got in touch with me about doing jobs and how we can make it better. I said, instead of just talking, you got to walk it like you talk it or you lose that beat. I said I was going to help, Chief. No one reached out to me at all to help. I mean, I'm there. I'm there.
Through the chair to Councilman Conwell, thank you so much. You're always very supportive. On the job and career piece, this may be useful for this group to know. As of today, Saturday morning, YOU, through the application process, has received 6,797 applications countywide. 4,250 of those, that's 62%, are from City of Cleveland residents. And so we know when we make programming available that matches the need and the interest, our young people, our families, they will respond. As far as the job fair that you mentioned, the team is still working on that with Director Rose and Director Matt Cole. And so they are still working on the youth and young adult job fair. And so as soon as they get that group organized, I'll make sure that they reach out to you.
All right, I won't meddle to try to go in and but I do understand it. I've been blessed to put on really at least 70 job fairs in my lifetime to try to help people to put them to work, because I believe in the power of work, and I believe that work is therapeutic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. We have Councilman Casey, Councilman Slife.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'll try to keep it short and to the piece of legislation. Mr. Chairman, to the chief, what's the total budget of the PIO office?
The total PIO office budget for 2024 is a little shy of $5 million. Okay. It includes not only the expanded programs, the youth employment, of course there's the staffing piece, but our office is also doing the administration for the Commission for Black Women and Girls.
All right, and Mr. Chairman, to the chief, and that's where I was getting to. Is this $1.3 million coming out of contractual services within the PIO office? This is not additional dollars outside of the PIO office?
That is correct.
All right, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Councilman Slife.
Thank you, and I apologize to my colleagues. I wasn't able to attend the joint meeting this morning, so I apologize if I ask duplicate questions, and honestly for bringing up some of my concerns about this at the 11th hour. But this, to the council president, I voted against this version of the legislation last year for one reason, and I'm going to vote against it again. Some of these contracts coming forward are well in excess of $50,000, and typically any amount over $50,000 requires legislative authority. But the way that this is packaged together as an omnibus piece, it's my understanding that these do not require, so for after-school all-stars, just because they're at the top, through the chair, is it correct that they will not be seeking additional, you will not be seeking additional legislation to enter into a contract in the amount of $221,679? Is that correct? The intent, yes, to the chief.
Through the chair to Councilman Slife, all of these add up to the total amount that we've requested of the 1.3 million.
Sure. So to answer, to make sure I understand your answer, Ordinance 313-2024 would be cited as the legislative authority to enter into each of these contracts listed.
Through the chair to Councilman Slife, this ordinance would cover all of these contracts.
Okay. So to my colleagues, that's problematic to me because I just fundamentally think it's an abdication of our legislative authority. Two, I understand that the administrative burden of going through individual contracts, but for this amount of organizations. But I also just have questions. So some of these are repeat contracts. And I'm just not seeing where we're receiving enough information, not just about the participants, but about who the organizations are. I'm not sure if any of these, I have a conflict of interest with any of these organizations that we're going to be entering into contract with. And quite frankly, I have some pretty serious questions about the cost per participant. So my second question, sticking with After School All-Stars, because they're at the top, is it a lump sum contract of $221,679, or do we disperse by the number of participants?
Through the chair to Councilman Slife, when the contracts are administered, they're for the total amount, but all of the vendor contracts are also a part of a reimbursement. And so all of those things are considered along the way. And so there will be times where a contract was planned for a specific number of participants, planned for a specific number of materials, and if the vendor does not hit that, then they would not charge us.
Okay, but we don't have at this table the nuance of which would be subject to that sort of provision and which would not. Through the chair.
Through the chair to Councilman Slife, all of that is handled on the administrative side of the House.
Okay. So last year, I'm sorry, I've been reading the previous year. Last year, After School All-Stars received $221,679 for a maximum number of participants of 200, which is $1,108 per participant. I think this year they're asking for slightly a little more, but still, so it's just maybe slightly larger than that. That seems, I could sign my son up. If I were a non-member of the YMCA, I could sign my son up for a week-long 9 to 4 day camp at the West Shore YMCA for under $200. So I mean, it's for $959 per person for a 26-person tennis program seems astronomically high. And I presume if we are offering this as a service that we're not charging these organizations to operate within our public facility. That's so that can be a question, but my assumption is not that they're having to inflate costs to charge a user fee. And I think Parks has rightfully begun a conversation of whether or not we should be giving free permits to, say, an organization that profits off of running a sports league in a public park. That's a question to be had. But in this case, it seems that organizations are deriving substantial profit off of using our facility for free, and it just seems that the cost per participant for some of these is incredibly high. And I think I'm uncomfortable without having further justification for how it costs $1,000 per participant for music lessons. It doesn't square with me. So for those reasons, those number of reasons, I find it difficult to support this ordinance. I'll be voting no if it goes to the floor tonight. Thank you.
Through the chair, if I might, I just want to point out to you, Councilman Slife, that a number of these are across multiple seasons and multiple locations because, again, these are annual contracts. And so while we were trying to create a system that help you see numbers as transparently as possible, they're not all apples to apples. My staff would be happy to sit with you and walk through the specifics of some of the contracts where you have some questions.
Thank you, Chief, but frankly, I would like to have that information before I sign my name to something I don't understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me say this. a lot of these contracts, when I'm looking at YOU and the youth summer, we have to get these up and running now. Because if we wait, then what we'll run into the challenge of is a lot of these children won't be onboarded. There are a couple that I do understand that Councilman Slife has asked for, but it's my understanding the reason that we looked at these programs is because a lot of them have to get up and stood up, because if we continue to kick it down the road, then we won't be able to serve some of these children this upcoming summer. I do think that what we need to make sure that we're clear of is what I would call the Polisic and Conwell rule, that we just have an update that we can probably proffer and put forth an amendment to have an update to all of the relevant committees. And I would offer anybody on the Finance Committee, you're not on the Finance Committee, Councilman Jones, so it would have to be a member of the Finance Committee that would have to proffer an amendment to get updates on how we do this. And Councilman, you're well within your right. I understand your point. I just don't want to, due to process issues, hold that up. And I will have a conversation with Chief, because you're right. A lot of these should have more detail and more information, but I will say I'm comfortable moving this if we can make sure that we have some updates. So is there anybody that will be willing?
I will make that motion.
So Councilman Polisic has put forth an motion to have regular updates every 3 months, Councilman, or? So that'd be every 3 months, so that's
second it.
quarterly updates. Councilman Bishop has seconded. Is there any further discussion? Councilman Jones has a conversational discussion
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
on this point, strictly this
Yes,
point.
Mr. Chairman. So when we talk about,
That's me, man.
my colleague, Councilman Charles Life, talked about the breakdown of the program. So having a breakdown packet of each one of these programs would absolutely be helpful. So moving forward, so if we have this information, Mr. Chairman, it would help me.
We'll
But
work that through the thing.
I have no unreadiness, though.
Okay, discussion, and we work through that with the reporting process. Discussion, Councilman Kevin Conwell.
Yeah, I like the motion that Councilmember Mike Polisic put on the floor, quarterly progress report. But with the quarterly progress report, you guys have an evaluation, people that come in to evaluate all the programs. Is that correct, to the chair, to the chief?
Through the chair to the chief, we used to have an evaluation process through the city urban analytics office, and are now setting up some new things, the pieces that we're doing with Case Western, as well as with our urban AI office, in terms of just doing a dashboard and starting to measure some of the things that these programs are doing across the office.
Yeah, but the question I'm asking with the evaluation process, are we looking at pre-testing, post-testing?
Through the chair to Councilman Conwell, because each of these programs are unique and different,
They're different.
all of the evaluation measures will not be exactly the same. But for those partners, for example, that do tutoring and academic-based work, they do pre and post. For somebody else who might do a program that's a one-day event focused on STEAM education and overall exposure, they would do more of a survey from the participants to find out, engage how they were engaged and what they had for that day. So they do range.
Yeah, 'cause you're doing a survey analysis. So let me ask you this question. When you come and you do the progress report, you're going to have what? You're going to have a cost analysis in there? Like you just mentioned earlier, the budget is, let's say, for a year. And we got time constraints, therefore we have to get it out. So you're saying that the budget is for a year. So that quarter, 1/4 of it is to cost us this amount. That would satisfy Councilmember Slife, because he's right. It costs a lot of money that I see for that, but that 220 people might be just for that quarter. The next quarter, you have another 220 people, and then the next one, another 220 out the 4 quarters. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councilman Conwell, my guess is, depending on the timing of the quarterly updates, we might have a lag. And so each quarter, we might be reporting on the quarter that just took place. It really is going to depend on the timing. But we're happy to spend some time with you or whomever else designing what those quarterly reports might look like. I do also want to say this. What appears and feels expensive to us If you look nationally at what it costs to do this kind of work and to offer these kinds of programs, we are not spending more money than any other community. In many measures, some people would say we're spending a lot less. And so I do want to make sure when we're thinking about this, we are doing our best to compare apples to apples as it relates to what it is we're offering and what the actual expenses are. And so I just wanted to elevate that because I know sometimes numbers feel a little fluctuated. And I just wanted to make sure that I said that to the committee. But we do appreciate the support. It is important to Council President's point that we get this done so that we can have programming available for young people this summer.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
On that quarterly, it's going to be, they're going to provide this quarterly as to how many individuals are being serviced, where and what neighborhoods they're operating in, and or facilities are operating in or out of. Okay, so we can get a picture of what's going on here.
Yeah, we can work with that. We'll make sure we get that. We'll get that report. That's what the quarterly report will be.
You know, Mr. President, with me, I don't care about numbers in different wards. For me,
I said across the city.
Across the city,
Yeah.
I'm there.
Okay, we'll get that report from you.
But if I have 50 guys taking drum lessons and they're doing well, Collinwood, what do I care? As long as the children are being benefited. I mean, that's just where I'm at. But let me say this also in my conclusion, Chief. When you evaluate it, Councilman Mike Polisic is right. When you evaluate it, we can write proposals, not grants. People say write grants. Grants is a gift given to you. We can write proposals to go to different foundations, and then we could build a case and not even ask the city for so much money, and we could get dollars from the Gun Foundation, from Tiger Woods Foundation, from anywhere and everywhere when we evaluate, because you can sell evaluation processes through the chair to the chief.
Through the council president chair to Councilman Conwell, this is just one slice of all that we're working on and doing under the Youth and Family Success umbrella. I think it would be useful to have an opportunity to be in conversation with council as a whole, or through some kind of an open house kind of forum where we can share with you the larger picture. But what we came to you to talk to you today about was specifically those expanded programs that we mostly place in rec centers through the general fund dollars that you afford us. But outside of this, we are doing projects with the Cleveland Foundation. We're in conversations with the county, talking about what is the bigger mission and vision for a shared children and youth agenda for our community, so that we can all be more thoughtful about what we're making available, how we're assessing and evaluating it, and how we could better coordinate resources so that we leverage all the money that we have and we do a better job as a collective community going after other resources to support our kids where we have gaps. And so that's a whole nother part of my job. And we're doing those things as well. And so often we come to the table, we're focused on a very specific piece of legislation, but what's coming up is there are all these other really thoughtful questions as it relates to big picture. I think we've got to find out in partnership together, how do we create the right forum to have those conversations as well, so that you understand that this kind of work that we're doing out of the general fund isn't happening in a vacuum. And so I'll maybe spend some time with Council President and whomever else he decides is best to figure out how do we do that, because you all have lots of great ideas, lots of experience and suggestions, but it's not always the right fit for the specific thing that we're talking about at the table. So I want to make sure that we create the right forum so that we could do that work together.
Let me ask you just one quick question. We know that the arts money is coming up, and they're going to increase the percentage dealing with the cigarette taxes. And we know that cigarettes, people are smoking less. We know that. And so they're increasing the amount. Are we going to get some of the, because you're talking about arts in here, is it a way that we can receive some of the funding from the cigarettes? I mean, I'll be with some of them tomorrow. Are we going to receive any of that funding also? Because you're talking about educating children through the arts in here. And it's through the arts. Instead of the art museum or MOCA, the Service Hall receiving
Talk to the microphone.
a lion's share of the money. Okay, but so the arts, because the arts levy will be on the ballot in November, and we should get some of the dollars, especially in the city of Cleveland, for our children, because a lot of the smokers are from the city of Cleveland. Through the chair.
Through the chair to Councilman Conwell, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that specific question. What I imagine and believe has happened in the past is that a number of the organizations across the city that have been providing arts-based programming to City of Cleveland children are receiving funding from multiple sources. But I don't know the answer to your question.
Yeah, we should get some of that money for you guys. I'll bring it up tomorrow.
All right, seeing no other questions, ordinance, we have a motion and discussion is closed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. 313-2024 will be as amended. 313-2024 as amended. Mr. Roberts, you have it. As amended, will be heard by all of council this evening. Please sign on. Thank you all.
Thank you.
That being said, this Committee of Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is called to adjourn.